All right. Mic check 1 2 1 2. If anyone in the chat can hear me, just push 1. My volume's a little bit low too, so hopefully this works. All right, we got a confirmation from Reigning Woman. Thank you, and good evening to you. Welcome back to the Black Brain Trust. This is episode 339, Economics. Please hit the like button as you come in. Share the video if possible. Hit that notification bell so you get all the updates from the Black Brain Trust, including those posted on the community tab. Docket in the description beneath the video for you to follow along with. Just as an FYI, we are not certified financial planners. If you want a certified financial planner, please go to cfp.net. We do not give out financial advice on this channel. Also, there'll be a link in the chat if you want to get on the panel to contribute to the discussion. Raise your hand in the waiting room and someone will advance you to the panel. All right. I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on this because I definitely want to go live again after this is all said and done, and make sure we do some house cleaning. All right, so first item on the docket is from marketwatch.com. This credit card will let you earn rewards to pay off your student loans, but is it a good deal? Student loan giant Sallie Mae is now offering 3 credit cards designed for the collegiate set, including one that lets people use their cash back rewards to pay off student loans. But for some, the smarter move could be to sign up for other credit building cards on the market. The 3 credit cards, Sallie Mae Ignite, Sallie Mae Accelerate, and Sallie Mae Evolve, are all structured similarly. Each has a base rate for cashback rewards and then an extra 25% bonus on rewards if users fulfill certain requirements. Here's how they break down. Sorry. The Sallie Mae Accelerate card offers 1.25% back on all purchases, but people can get an extra 25% bonus on the rewards if the rewards are used to pay down any federal or private student loan. This can be done through Sallie Mae's mobile app. The Sallie Mae Ignite card, which is intended to help college students build credit, pays 1% back on all purchases. Card holders can then unlock a 25% bonus on rewards earned on all future purchases if they make 6 consecutive months of on-time payments. Finally, the Sallie Mae Evolve card offers 1.25% back on all purchases, but users will receive a 25% bonus on rewards earned for purchases made in their top 2 spending categories each business cycle automatically. While others may add a student label to an existing card, we co-created a true student card, Sallie Mae Ignite, with students, parents, and recent graduates, and are specifically designed to promote financial responsibility. Rick Castellano, Sallie Mae's Vice President of Corporate Communications, told MarketWatch, "Our priority is to help students build credit responsibly and reward them for it." The cards have no annual fees, but do charge fees for late payments and foreign transactions. Each card has a 0% annual percentage rate period, 6 months for the Ignite and 12 months for the Accelerate and Evolve. The interest rate then moves to a variable rate between 14.99% and 24.99% 0.99%. All of the cards come with cell phone protection if the cardholder pays their monthly wireless bill through their Sallie Mae card. Unlimited 1% cash back is similar to a handful of other student reward cards, said Nathan Grant, credit industry analyst at Credit Card Insider. For instance, the Journey Student Rewards card from Capital One sorry, I got interrupted there. Anyways, for instance, the Journey Student Rewards card from Capital One pays 1% back on all purchases and then an additional 0.25% back for making on-time payments. Other student cards are better for people who spend a lot on in certain categories. The Discover It Student Cashback Card, DFS, offers 5% back up to $1,500 in spending each quarter in categories that rotate each month. And people who maintain a 3.0 grade point average can get an additional $20 statement credit each year. Meanwhile, the Discover It Student Chrome offers 2% back on purchases at restaurants and gas stations. This is interesting because what they're trying to do with this is basically consolidate all of the debtors to student loans into a system that forces them to spend money in order to gain rewards to actually pay off student loans that should, for all intents and purposes, have the most burden on them. I think this is a stupid move by Sallie Mae. I hate Sallie Mae as a company. They serve no real purpose outside of just being a bloodsucker to the people. There's other ways of going about paying student loan debt off. I think that community service should serve as a alternative. I think if you contribute your time per quarter or per year, that should go to paying your student loans off, right? So if you volunteered as a tutor at, let's say, elementary school or some form of public school, that should also contribute to writing off some of those student loans, depending on what the time is. If you think about it from a wage standpoint, I don't know what a actual teacher makes or what a tenured teacher makes, but if you are a graduate student, you have student loans, or you're an undergraduate student with student loans, you should be able to actually give your community service through tutoring, and they should write it off from there. So if I tutor 2 or 3 days a week, that would be considered a part-time job, but I'm doing it as a way to actually alleviate some of my student loans. So that should take care of what I can't afford out of my pocket. That's the way it should work, and the kids benefit because they're actually getting quality. They're getting quality guidance from those who have been through the collegiate struggle. So that's my take on it. I don't agree with Sallie Mae at all. Hey, what's going on, Cyberdyne? What's going on, DE Raptor? Shalom.
Shalom, Mike. Shalom to the chat.
Hey, Mike. What's going on? What's up, DE? How you doing,
Chilling,
bro?
Chilling.
All right.
I think you think your idea is probably better, but you got to look at it this way. These guys are trying to break into the credit card market too, and these graduates, they are new to the credit market, and a a lot of them are not saving because they can't afford to save. Most of them can't afford to save because they got a lot of student debt.
Mm-hmm.
And Sallie Mae is playing on their student debt emotion, and mostly to get a share of the credit card market, because the credit card market is huge. You know what I'm saying? And in America, the school debt, I mean, that one is just as bad, you know? So I think, besides what you said, them trying to get into the credit card market is part of it.
All right, let me get to this next article. This one is from CNN.com. Chipotle will cover tuition for tech and business degrees. Chipotle will pay for its employees to get business or technology degrees at certain colleges, the company said Tuesday. The new program, which kicks off on November 15th, is the restaurant chain's latest effort to attract and retain talent in a highly competitive labor market. Employees who have been at the company for at least 120 days and work a minimum of 15 hours per week can choose from 75 different degree programs at 5 schools: the University of Arizona, Bellevue University, Brandman University, Wilmington University, and Southern New Hampshire University. Chipotle will cover tuition only if employees remain at the company and asks that they stay at least 6 months after they earn their degrees. The new benefit is an expansion of Chipotle's existing programs. The chain already offers up to $25,250 a year in tuition reimbursement, as well as other education assistance programs. Unemployment is at 3.5%, a historically low level. Competition for workers is fierce, and companies are fighting for them in a variety of ways. Starbucks is improving its mental health benefits. McDonald's has partnered with AARP in a bid to hire older employees, and Taco Bell through hiring parties to attract new talent. I wonder what that's like. With so many good options, companies have to make a good case for their employees to join their companies and stay. The debt-free degree program is a way for Chipotle to show current employees that they are committed to helping with their personal and professional development, said Marissa Andrada, Chief People Officer for Chipotle. It's also a way to attract new employees who are concerned about college debt. For young people to have the ability to afford an education, what a great way to attract new talent, she said. Andrada explained that when Chipotle polled its general managers through an engagement survey, many said that educational benefits were important. They also reported interest in the company's business and tech development, Andrada said, which is why Chipotle selected those two degree options. Chipotle has made reducing turnover a priority to improve customer service and efficiency in stores. We are focused on team stability and development, CEO Brian Nicole said while discussing the company's first quarter earnings in April. He stressed the importance of holding on to restaurant managers through better leadership training, providing a direction on career progression to ensure long-term success and great benefits. This is interesting because if I have a degree in IT, I'm not working at Chipotle. What the hell do I need to work there for?
I think it's maybe for perhaps people who are not so saturated within the field, unless, mostly to get a start. So at least if they can get some type of technological experience, Chipotle is going to try to do whatever they can to do to keep that talent in house and obviously be competitive going into the future. And like you've said on previous panels, a lot of company going into this fourth paradigm shift realize that everything's about technology. So I think it's just maybe a strategy on their part to kind of stay competitive as opposed to other similar food chains, and for the potential candidates, for them to get a little bit of air under their wings before they move on to a more robust position somewhere else.
Yeah, it could be a possibility, but the thing is, that's not the sort of the restaurant industry. It has several IBM like tech companies that actually help them advance their point of sales operations and their menus and things like that. So I would be more inclined to actually go to those companies. See, when you get a degree from a good institution, a D1, whatever it is, especially if you have LinkedIn, other recruiters are trying to hunt you down because they want to get new talent into their place.
Absolutely.
Chipotle is not, it doesn't have the zing to it like Google or Facebook does. That's like, I'm like, well, what do you work? Oh, I work at Chipotle. They think you flip burgers or something like that, or whatever, or chicken or something like that. But in reality, you have a degree and you work at Chipotle. That's not. It's not the business, man. It's not the way how millennials move. Millennials don't move like that. Millennials are very, they're not faithful to the company. We covered an article about ghosting. Millennials ghosting. First days on the job. You think if they have a degree in tech that they're going to stick around for Chipotle? No, they're going to bolt right out of there. But that's part of the conflict that they have in their hiring process, because it's not meant to be a long-term job. It's meant to be a temporary job, right? You're not meant to be there. You're not supposed to build a career at Chipotle. You're supposed to like go there, work part-time, 15 to 30 hours or whatever it is, until you reached your goal of graduation or whatever it is that you're trying to do, and then you advance. You don't go to Chipotle with a tech degree and be like, where do I park at? Where's my desk at? Where's my office? Right? There's no office inside the restaurant. So the corporate side is different, but I understand. I just don't see the long-term value in this.
True that. I think you just said it, long term. However, I would add in a side observation, because I don't really eat at Chipotle too much. It's right around the corner from where I live. But it will be interesting to see if Chipotle does come to the market with some technological or customer interfacing technology similar to McDonald's. And I think what's interesting, where I kind of might disagree with your point, but agree with it in other places, is that a lot of people might have despised McDonald's, but they have a very robust, employee program. But you have to spend some time in there. So I wouldn't be surprised if Chipotle is looking for IT people to kind of revolutionize and save its butt in terms of coming up with some innovative, customer interface items. Save that it isn't, being offshored or being developed, like you said, by other outside entities in that space.
Yeah, I worked at McDonald's during the initial phases of the automation process for their point of sale system. So I'm quite familiar with that. They do have McDonald's corporate, so that's separate from the restaurant business itself. And what I'll say to that is, the people who work there don't take a whole lot of pride in being there. To be quite frank, from my experience, they don't really care all that much about the corporate aspect of it. When companies like that want the corporate side of those companies want talent, there's enough agencies and whatnot that would provide contract work for these for them. So, which is how I got in over there. So I'm not really convinced that Chipotle actually needs that sort of talent. There's too much talent already available, but they're trying to reduce turnover. But that's exactly the name of the business, man. It's going to be high turnover because it's not meant to be a long-term career there. And trying to woo people into being there long term so that they can move up the ladder, I guess, from shaking fries, man, or something to
Right.
to writing code. I don't think that's not the business, man.
That's a heck of a level up.
Yeah.
Well, they might not be trying to get you to stay after you complete your degree. What they're doing is trying to do is stabilize their hiring. If the restaurant is having to hire 4 or 5 people, do that training, every 2 weeks or every month, and you can slow that down to maybe 1, because now this person is going to school. The person is assured that they're going to have the time to study if you can work with a manager. Say I'm going to school, I'm using the Chipotle program, and for the next 4 years, I'm working with this manager who is going to work with me to make sure that I get my degree, but he's got somebody who he can slide into place. I can work like in the evening. If I got my class in the morning, I can work in the morning. If I got my class in the evening, and then for the next 4 years, I'm going to get a degree. That's something I'm going to get out for myself. It's going to cut down on my expenses. You know what I'm saying? I might just have to buy my books and the rest of the classes I pay for.
I would be more impressed if they went to a community college and linked up with them there, right? And if you stay within the community, not if you went to these select universities that's going to be, they both have mutual interest because they both invested into each other, but not really into the student itself or the employee. So that's where I have a problem. But if they went to a community college and help build out a program and a pathway to say, hey, we'll pay for all your community college if you live in a certain area, in these low income areas, this is what we'll do for you. See, they're not thinking about that because low income would be equal black, and they don't really have that vested interest. So
Absolutely.
If I was a black student, if I was a student today, and I had to pay my way through college, and I see Chipotle have a program like this, I would graduate. I mean, I would kind of look at it, and see if it's going to be a benefit to me. If it's going to be a benefit to me, I will give that. I don't know. It might be 2 years, or it might be 4 years. If I am there for 2 years, get my degree, and I find another something better, then I move on. But I know that I'm going to get my degree. If I know for sure this is what I want, but right now I can't afford it, and this opportunity comes up, then I'm going to take it. Because if I come out with a 4-year degree and I got my tech certification, then it's going to benefit me. I can give them the 4 years, because I'm going to come out on top in the end. I'm going to get for me, it's going to be the greatest benefit. Yes, they're going to benefit, but for me, it's going to be the greatest benefit.
Before you move on to the next article, Mike, something I just thought about looking at the title of our subject tonight, economics. I wonder, all this aside, what's the ultimate benefit other than the IT related piece to Chipotle? I wonder what position would they be in terms of getting tax breaks for financing those would-be participants who would participate in a higher education program. I know Chipotle has to be getting something out of it just for the fact of potential short-term, human capital from this. So maybe that's the back end kicker that nobody knows.
Well, it is. My initial, I started out going accounting taxes in Dayton. And all of this, what you see Chipotle doing is actually a tax write-off.
Yep.
They are going to get a substantial tax write-off, not only for the money that they spent doing that, but because the government has a program that let companies who are, especially minorities, take out all of that from their taxes.
All right, let me get to this next article from Fox Business. Millennials turn to extreme saving methods to retire early. A personal finance trend called FIRE is gaining ground amongst millennials. FIRE stands for Financial Independence Retire Early. Some millennials reportedly use it as a tool to help them retire as early as 30. Fire followers try to invest as much as 75% of their annual income while cutting down on day-to-day expenses. But is it a solid retirement strategy? Saving is a great value, especially for younger people. Capitalist Pig founder Jonathan Honig. That should be encouraged, but retiring is uh, ludicrous, certainly at that young age. Look, working is a value. Productivity is a value. It's a spiritual value. Retiring early can repeatedly take a negative turn on your health as well. From an investment perspective, FIRE drew criticism from Fox Business Christina Prasanalov. Whatever, what kind of name is that? I think this strategy won't work because in the past, from 2009 to 2012, great period to invest in risky stocks going forward. You can't really make as much of a gain. This is predicted by BlackRock, a lot of investment funds. So I'm not sure it's the right strategy. The panel agreed, saying saving is a paramount, especially in today's volatile market. My best advice is treat every dollar like it counts. Best advice I can ever give you, Gary Klopbaum of Klopbaum Capital Management noted. Retiring at 30? I don't know, man. That doesn't sound like a real strategy, man. How much money could you really earn? I mean, you don't really start earning until you're like 40. So
It's interesting. It's you know, I guess it would I wonder if it means what their true definition of retirement means. You know, are they trying to define retirement as free from a career of actually working for someone else? Or are they just saying, I can retire from this thing and you're actually doing something else? Retiring at 30, yeah, I kind of gotta agree with you on that. Even if you hit the Powerball or something, or you make some type of patent and you become a billionaire by 31 or something like that. I mean, being idle does have negative implications because you wouldn't be getting involved in certain things had you not been idle. But I don't know.
DE, when did you retire? I think DE is having his porridge tonight. Or maybe it's the cream of wheat with the lumps.
Get that wick out, DE.
All right, this one is from usatoday.com. Sears and Kmart closing more stores in late 2019 and early 2020. Is your location closing? Sears and Kmart store closings are expected to continue into early 2020, while more than 100 Sears and Kmart stores will shutter in the coming months. Additional closures will stretch into January. Company officials did not release an official list of the locations that will close, but news outlets across the nation, as well as documents filed with state governments, show some of the closings will happen in January 2020. We are not disclosing the store lists or number of remaining stores, company spokesman Larry Costello said Monday in a statement to USA Today. The news of additional closures come about a year after the company filed for bankruptcy on October 15th, 2018. At the time of filing for bankruptcy, 142 closures were announced. In February, former Sears CEO Eddie Lampert struck a last-minute deal to buy Sears assets on bankruptcy and kept about 400 stores open under a new entity, Transform Holdco, also known as Transformco. Lampert, who relinquished the CEO role when the company filed for bankruptcy was the company's largest shareholder and creditor at the time of the bankruptcy. In early August, Transformco announced it would close 26 stores, 21 Sears and 5 Kmart locations between late October and mid-November. In announcing the closures, the company said more closings were still a possibility. Following these steps, we will continue to evaluate our network of Sears and Kmart stores and cannot rule out additional store closures in the near term. The company's August 6th statement said, our goal remains to return the company to profitability and preserve as many jobs as possible in the communities we serve. Yeah, this is a list of stores that there's going to be closing.
So wait,
Mhm.
so is this a list of the stores that are closing, or is this a list of stores that have closed?
No, it's just a list of early 2020 closings here
Okay.
and the late 2019 closings.
Okay. So these are actually on record as of closed. I thought the article had mentioned that they weren't gonna mention additional closing.
Well, they had made a list last year. We covered it. About 100 plus stores that we're going to be closing down. But it sounds to me like they have not. The new spokesperson just doesn't want to release it. Probably doesn't want to spread pandemonium to employees bailing out.
Exactly. That was my sentiments exactly, and that's a smart move, to protect against further attrition. It's ironic. Right before you scroll down, I was thinking, if they went into bankruptcy, my next thought in my mind was like, okay, what else? What else did they become? And what else did they name themselves to try to take up, the slack? But I think what that CEO was doing is interesting. That he was the majority shareholder, and he formed that new entity, that new going concern, to kind of hold on to some of the assets, and yet we see he's still, letting off some stores. He's basically trying to recoup his investment on whatever remaining assets that they have. That's extremely clear, from a business economic standpoint, what he's doing.
All right, next one is from CNBC.com. Larry Summers, U.S. economy is just one bad recession away from zero rates or worse. The United States is just one bad recession away from being right back at zero interest rates or even lower, Larry Summers warned on CNBC on Monday. It's a very different world when everyone's stuck at zero interest rates, said Summers, a critic of President Donald Trump, who served as former President Bill Clinton's Treasury Secretary and as an economic advisor for former President Barack Obama. We'll have to think about stabilization policy. Institutions are going to have to think about their investment policy in a very different world when we have a black hole, zero interest rate world, Summers said on Squawk on the Street. I fear that's what we're heading to. The Harvard economics professor warned, pointing to Japan's economy, which has experienced decades of stagnation. The Japanese central bank, the Bank of Japan, embarked on its journey into negative rates in 2016, about 2 years after the European Central Bank. Without major change in the US, Summers predicts there's little chance of policy rates set by Federal Reserve staying above zero. We are one recession away from a situation of that kind. Summers said he sees a recession on the horizon, but put the risk of it happening next year below 50%. Those odds go up over the next several years, he added. The Fed this year has twice cut rates by a quarter point, as concerns of a global economic downturn slowing the US economy intensify. The market expects at least one more Fed rate cut before 2020. Trump has repeatedly bashed the Fed for not reducing borrowing costs even further. In a tweet last month, the president called Fed Chairman Jerome Powell and other central bankers boneheads. Sounds like the manosphere. The Federal Reserve should get our interest rates down to 0 or less, and we should then start to refinance our debt. The interest could be brought way down, while at the same time sustainability or substantially lengthening the term, he said. According to the minutes of their September meeting released last week, some Fed policymakers expressed concern last month that markets are experiencing more cuts than the central bank intends to deliver. The Federal Open Market Committee approved a quarter-point rate cut at the September 17th, 18th meeting, putting the overnight funds rate in the target of 1.75% to 2%. The July cut by the same amount was the first reduction in rates in more than a decade. I do not think we'd be looking at using negative rates, Powell told reporters, following last month's FOMC meeting. They are meeting again at the end of October. Before this year's cuts, the Fed raised rates 9 times, 4 of them in 2018 alone. Since the funds the funds rate was lowered to a target range of 0% to 0.25% in December 2008, central bankers cut rates 10 times in 2007, 2008, and embarked on other stimulative measures to boost the economy as the financial crisis took hold. So what's interesting about this is that the trade war is actually compounding onto this. So there's going to be a lot of scarcity in terms of fresh new investments into lower interest rates. The thing is that, from my understanding, is that these guys raising interest rates because they're profiting off of it. So they have very little interest in reducing the rates.
Absolutely, it's a hedge bet. It's basically, being at the dice table. They're hedging on a don't bet. Mm-hmm. They know the 7's coming, and so they're going to hedge as much as they can to win that don't bet.
Mm-hmm. Hey, peace to everyone in the chat for joining us, man. Really appreciate you guys showing up. All right, next one is from CNBC.com. Goldman Sachs CEO says Apple Card is the most successful credit card launch ever. They would say so. Goldman Sachs CEO David Solomon called his bank's rollout of the Apple Card the most successful credit card launch ever. Solomon provided investors with an update on the bank's new initiatives at the start of a conference call Tuesday. In the 3 short years, we have raised $55 billion in deposits on the Marcus platform, generated $5 billion in loans, and built a new credit card platform and launched Apple Card. Solomon said, adding, which we believe is the most successful credit card launch ever. Continuing on the Apple Card, which the bank built in partnership with the iPhone maker, Solomon said that since August, we've been pleased to see a high level of consumer demand for the product. From an operational and risk perspective, we've handled the inflows smoothly and without compromising our credit underwriting standards. The bank is also building next generation electronic trading platform and a new corporate cash management business, he said. Taken together, these investments draw on our God damn.
Those damn ads.
Yeah, man, that thing just almost blew my eardrum, man. Damn.
Yeah.
Anyways, I'm not gonna. I can't deal with it. Fucking ads, man. Anyways, yeah, Apple would be successful because they're in partnership with somebody. You know, a lot of people think that Apple did this on their own, but they did not. So it's important for people to understand that this is a strategy to garner those people who like to spend lots and lots of buku bucks on Apple products to funnel them into a new credit scheme to lock them into these to lock them into a new market. They know that these guys have money, so the idea is to pitch to them as many financial products as possible. And the Apple Card is like the perfect thing.
Absolutely. I think it's also, excuse me, a big play on Apple, like you said. It certainly goes along with the current business strategy of, utilizing their very famous customer base in relation to, their product offerings. When you see someone, I have someone, at the office, and they swear up and down, Apple's life-changing, Apple's the best. And, while I kind of fall on both sides of the fence in terms of, Apple products,
What do you use now?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, no, I said, what do you use now?
Well, I got a Galaxy Note 8 that I'm on now, and I got a Galaxy Note 10 and a Note 9 sitting in the box in the other room. So I have an iPhone, but I can't wait to get rid of it. And the only reason I got it was because I bought my mother a phone. I thought the Apple interface, which, as a technologist, there are advantages and disadvantages, I think, for some people. Apple's product offering works for them in terms of the experience, and for others, there's something else. But I have the iPhone 8 and I can't wait to get rid of it because I'm on Sprint Flex plan or whatever the hell that is, and locked in for 5 more months. And as soon as that time's up, I'm getting rid of it, giving mom a shiny new Note something or Galaxy something with a nice case on it, and I'm going to use my Note 10 and step on from there. But no, as we were saying, it's interesting. I wonder what the impact is going to be on businesses. I think, there may be, Apple's going to offer some significant kickbacks to a lot of businesses that, use some of its products. And they tend to pitch, a lot towards the C-suite crowd when it comes to business. And so I think that there's going to be some definite tie-ins to business with this whole banking platform. And like you said, they're basically building the door to lock everybody behind that door when it closes, and then how Apple rolls. So,
right. I mean, you have Apple Pay. The next step was to add an Apple Card. So
that's right. And a banking platform. So, look at the implications that are gonna explode from that.
yeah, a lot of people have to remember that Apple has like billions and billions of dollars in cash that they're sitting on because they pay their taxes in other countries like Ireland. So
absolutely.
Yeah, let me get to the next article. This one from Bloomberg.com. The recession train has left the station. A minor trade war truce, if it even exists, won't save the economy. Oh, this is behind the paywall. A trade truce will probably not save us. For the past 18 months, the global economy has been on a miserable roller coaster ride, the fiery fist of trade war pain. In the past few days alone, we've gone from soaring highs to gut-wrenching drops. At the end of the line, recession awaits. On Friday, President Donald Trump said he struck a trade truce with China, and stocks soared. This morning, China said it needed more talks to reach a truce, and markets tumbled. Having fun yet? No. For more of this sort of entertainment, we'll see the Brexit. So this is behind a paywall, but my initial response to this is basically a trade war and a looming recession coming is like the equivalent of getting an uppercut and getting a jab, man. At some point, all of this is going to come is going to aggregate a spiral effect onto the economy, because everything's going to inflate from a product perspective because your goods are being tariffed at a high rate. And once you have people losing jobs, you know, you have all the retail, Sears and Kmart and all these other stores closing down. Who's going to want to spend money then? They're out of work. Things are expensive. People are going to clutch their pearls for all intents and purposes, clutch their wallets, and they're not going to be interested in spending any money like that. So, and your economy can't move unless people spend money. So, you should probably figure this out. If you got people paying student loans off, they can't afford to spend, you know, money elsewhere. If people are spending $600, $1,200, $1,800 on student loans a month, that's money that could be going right back into the economy. The student loan payment is not jumpstarting the economy at all, and in fact, it's actually robbing your economy blind.
Yeah, once again, I can agree with that point as well. You know, I guess you could say, you know, the bill comes due, pun intended, with a scenario like that. You know what I'm saying? So no, you know, if I had to take a step back and look at that, forgive the train in the background, but if I had to take a step back and look at that, I think that just makes it for, you know, a very conducive environment for more businesses who are in the financial loan sector to take advantage of the people that's in that predicament, you know, especially offering them some sort of, you know, financial relief, even at a reduced cost over, you know, an extended period of time, putting them in more debt. So, you know, the help comes and it looks like help and it looks like medicine, but it you know, it's really, you're paying out of your pocket, stretching your pocket, should I say, over the long term. So not the help people really think it is.
Mm-hmm. I think DE Raptor is still woofing down his Danish and his strudel with his Ovaltine. All right, man, let me get to this next one from NewYorkTimes.com. There should be solution to the student debt problem. Income-driven repayment programs cover 8 million borrowers, but they could be helping more if they were simpler and reached the people who needed them. With more than 7.5 million student loan borrowers in default and nearly 2 million others seriously behind on their payments, there's little question that the handful of federal programs designed to help struggling borrowers pay what they can afford aren't working for everyone. And this is behind the paywall. But my initial take on this is the government has a vested interest in keeping everyone on the hook to pay their student loans, because at least the government-backed loans, to put more money back into their pockets. Where the money is going, I have no idea. I've asked this several times. How does paying student loans actually jumpstart the economy? How does it drive the economy? Where's the value behind it? I'm not seeing the return on investment, the ROI. From a nation state standpoint, people are not benefiting by putting all their mortgage payments into a student loan. You know,
Absolutely.
Nikki Haley under Trump, you know, she had like $1 million of student loans. Like, what the hell type of shit is this?
$1 million.
Yeah, well, between her kids go to D1 school, so
I'm sorry. That's it's so ridiculous. It's beautiful that it's so ridiculous. It's great. You know, I think thinking outside the box here, and I could be wrong, but again, that's why I'm stepping outside the box on this one. I think, you know, you're a politician, quote, quote, would argue that and I'm trying to give them the benefit of the doubt, but I think they would argue that, well, if they had to argue in favor of how paying or repaying student loans would benefit the economy, there has to be some politician out there that will probably try to hat trick and tell you that, well, if it weren't for the universities to educate people, to put them in, productive, positions to be in society, to provide a living for themselves and to be able to do something with themselves,
Mm-hmm.
They wouldn't be in that position in the first place. And so, if you don't pay back the institutions that make it possible to get an education, to put you in a productive working position, to be in society, where would you be? What would happen if those institutions fell off? So, while I don't agree with that, just playing devil's advocate, I wouldn't be surprised that a politician would try that, that sneak attack approach and try to pitch that to people as an excuse. So,
Yeah. All right, let me go to the next one from pedestrian.tv. 35-year-old CEO slams other millennials for entitlement despite being handed CEO job by his dad. The CEO of appliance company Winning Group, John Winning, has lashed out at millennials' poor work ethic and crazy expectations despite being a millennial himself. People are experiencing more than what they are expecting more than what they put in. Some of the people coming in for interviews, their expectation of what they should be paid versus how much they are expected to work is just crazy, he said. John, who took over the company from his dad after his grandfather created it over a century ago, seems to consider himself an expert on hard work despite being incredibly privileged. It appears Mr. Winning doesn't quite realize that life is a lot easier when your family owns a multi-million-dollar company. I'm not saying the 35-year-old hasn't worked hard, but as someone who comes from a reasonably privileged upbringing, I'm well aware that many of the opportunities I've been given are largely due to the privilege I have. John has achieved a number of great things in his 35 years of life, including starting discount white goods website, Appliance Online. He hasn't just taken his family's business and kept it going. He's worked hard to better it. But that doesn't excuse the fact that he's blatantly ignoring his privilege. To put it on his own words, he knew nothing about technology, management, or even retail before taking the leadership role. I am now unconventional. I am now an unconventional leader because I don't know what normal management is. I was thrown in the deep end because the business just grew. I went from being a kid that had done truck deliveries and a few sales on the shop floor into suddenly running an e-commerce website that I knew nothing about technology management, or even retail, other than the fact that it's in my blood. John said in an interview with CEO Magazine. I don't want to read too much into this because what I find interesting is that you have a white male who inherits a would-be successful business and has the audacity to call somebody else lazy, but had it not been for his family business, he would just be another bottom shelf Brad.
there you go.
Probably banging all the BWs though.
There you go. Man, that so I was gonna say, excuse me. Is it obviously it's a family business. I think the biggest thing I have a problem with on top of that is, he's saying I'm an unconventional leader, and I won't, draw it out, but we have a CIO in our company who doesn't know squat, but he's a leader, and I think part of his naivety comes from the fact that he doesn't know traditional management, You know, you don't get to brag about success if you know, you basically inherited the business, you know, saying it's in his blood. It's not in your blood because you just, you know, sat up there and told the reporter you don't know anything about traditional business. So that tells me, or tells a lot of us, you know, you don't know anything about having or coming through, you know, the woods to gain a substantial or suitable or you know, a suitable business acumen. You haven't developed that. You're branding yourself as unconventional. And on top of that, because you're unconventional, which we have a lot of this in corporate America today, people who didn't come through maybe the traditional way, and not that there's nothing wrong with that, but a lot of people tend to have those insecurities because they came in another way versus people who actually started at the bottom, worked their way through the ranks and took the helms of leadership at certain organizations. People like that tend to have some insecurities, Mike, and I think here in that scenario, it's indicative that not only does he have those insecurities, but because he's, you know, the family favorite son, he inherited the business. It's not in his blood, you know, it was given to you. Otherwise, someone else who's clearly more qualified out there in the market could have taken the reins and ran with it and probably had the same and or better result. So call bullshit on his part for that one, man.
Mm-hmm.
Straight up.
Because he could sit in his ivy tree and his ivory tower and make those statements. Let me go to the next one from Wall Street Journal. Drawn by the salary, women flock to trucking. Where's MOT when we need him? Last year, Rebecca Kuhn, what a name. Wait, let me read this again. Last year, Rebecca Kuhn.
That's deep.
Yeah. The irony, man. Left her job as an assistant manager of a gas station in Fort Bragg, North Carolina, to train as a truck driver, inspired by watching her uncle hit the road as a long-haul trucker when she was growing up. I thought it was really cool, like an extended camping trip, she says. Miss Kuhn is part of a new wave of women breaking. A new wave of women with the last name like that? No, man. The article is behind the paywall, but what I would say to this is that this is interesting. Because this is traditionally what men do, right? They, you know, go on the road and drive and they're away from their family. Now you got women wanting to take on, you know, the same sort of perspective and be away from their family too, if they even have one. According to this picture, I don't think this person has one.
Right. That's interesting. Who is that in the chat? I see Ghana Dan says he has a trucking company. Be interesting if, you know, Ghana Dan would join the panel today.
Well, he might be driving his truck right now. But yeah. But Ghana Dan, our dear brother Ghana Dan, is been instrumental in keeping us abreast with MOT on trucking ventures. So
really,
yeah, we got quite a few truckers on the Black Brain Trust. So so is Farrell Edmondson as well. Edmonds as well, and there's a couple other brothers who truck as well. I think Hostel at that. So I will, you know, if I wasn't in IT, I would probably be doing trucking, but I would be trying to, you know, I'm a tinkerer. So
yeah, likewise.
Yeah, so I would be trying to figure out a way of how to make the rig, the trailer itself, more profitable from a usability standpoint. There's probably some stipulations and whatnot and regulations that I'm probably not privy to that coincide with safety and whatnot that I would probably violate. But you know, I'm always trying to figure out a way to make things more profitable. But I see, yeah, they're in the chat now. Now I was just gonna say that Farrell Edmondson and Ghana Den are all in the chat. I think MOT hit me up earlier, so he might be listening too. But they're driving right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know what's interesting is that you bring up a excuse me, you bring up a point about the tinkerer side, and I guess the this whole trucking deal is that, you know, when I was a kid, you know, I'm still a big Transformers fan, And
I am too.
right. So, obviously my favorite Transformer is Optimus Prime, and I have a cat named Jazz. He's back in Ohio. But when you said Tinkerer, I was looking at this and I'm saying, man, I remember reading an article somewhere else. There's a black brother, who's out in, I want to say, because I think MOT's out there in the West, right? He's out there.
He's in Colorado.
Yeah, Colorado. There was a brother out there. I think overall there's like some oil or something out there. I'm gonna have to try to look it up at some point and bring it back. But there was a brother out there who, forgive the train, who had some type of truck, and he turned it into a barbershop.
Yeah.
And I mean, he made a ton of money, from workers who were out there in the fields. But I wonder, going back to the Optimus Prime example, we know that truck trailer would transform, and it would turn into like kind of a workstation, battle station / lab. And so I'm interested in the future prospect with truckers, and this is for my truckers out there, the technological aspect of actually coming up with something, or the viability of turning those truck trailers into functional objects that serve some type of business purpose, or that add value to the trucking initiative itself. I know they got some things out there, but I wonder, has anyone ever thought of taking that to the next level?
Well, the way how I see it is that unless the trailer is defunct, can no longer be used, it'll be difficult to actually convert it. But what I'm thinking is, how do you put advertising on the side of it, right? And milk the real estate of the trailer to actually leverage it for as a rolling billboard.
Specialized materials, maybe. I know that NASA, and not to deviate, and I got a NASA jacket one day. I got the nerve. But I know that, from that perspective, NASA was trying to build a material that could withstand some of the most frigid temperatures, and I think they were looking at maybe Neptune or Uranus, because of the frigid temperatures there. And what they did, because I think most of that environment is composed of some type of nitrogen, they made a very flexible material that they tested in the lab that was able to withstand the immense frigid temperatures of space, let alone what they would encounter on a planet like Neptune or Uranus, but at the same time be very flexible. And they were trying to model that into some type of prototypical spacesuit. And so, again, like you said, being a tinkerer, this is how our mind works. My mind, when you said that, I said, well, what if what about toying with the idea of making the trailer itself out of maybe some type of different material, so that you would still maintain the rigid, solid structure for protection, but essentially, automating what could be done with the trailer itself because of the materials, or being able to put materials that could potentially do as you said, turn that object into some type of profitable real estate, while still being able to do the trucking initiative. My mind just kind of thinks about that. And
well, there's fabric, used for organic light emitting diodes, OLED.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
That would be plastered on the side of the trailer itself, so you wouldn't really need to go through great lengths to actually put that sort of implementation on there. It probably would cost you a penny, but it would be made up in revenue and from the ads itself. So there's a lot that can be done with that. So
yeah.
Yeah.
So our city says Department of Transportation regulations are strict and don't play. But wouldn't you argue that those, because I know they do have some. Sorry about that. Out of country ringing. I would argue that couldn't they put in place some compliance? They can build some type of compliance around that and make it compliant. But I think,
Yeah, I would think that they're pretty strict about that. Let me get to this next article from businessinsider.com. Lonely, burned out, and depressed. The state of millennials' mental health in 2019. Millennials are changing the way people look at and talk about mental health. As part of World Mental Health Day, Business Insider took a look at the mental health state of millennials. It doesn't look pretty. Depression and deaths of despair are both on the rise among the generation, linked to issues such as loneliness and money stress. Millennials also feel that their jobs have an outsized role in their overall health, overall mental health. Because of longer working hours and stagnant wages, millennials suffer from higher rates of burnouts than other generations. Many of them have even quit their jobs for mental health reasons. While some millennials can't afford to get help, they are more likely to go to therapy than previous generations, destigmatizing the concept in the process. Here are 11 ways mental health has plagued the millennial generation. Depression is on the rise among millennials. Deaths of the despair are also on the rise. It's partly linked to money stress, but there are other structural factors at play behind the uptick in deaths of despair, according to the Trust of America's Health and Well-Being Trust. Namely, the myriad financial problems millennials are facing: student loan debt, healthcare, childcare, and an expensive housing market. These four costs are part of the Great American Affordability Crisis, plaguing millennials that's putting them financially behind. Students have found a correlation between people with debt and mental health problems. While this research, by its nature, can't identify causality, the likelihood of having a mental health disorder is 3 times higher among those with unsecured debt, according to a meta-analysis or study of studies in the Clinical Psychology Review. People who have died by suicide were 8 times more likely to have debt. Money stress isn't just contributing to millennials' mental health, it's also not everyone can afford to seek treatment. While millennials are more likely to have previous generations to attend therapy, 1 in 5 diagnosed with major depression doesn't seek treatment, according to Blue Cross report. That might be because of the rising healthcare costs. Healthcare is one of the 4 key costs plaguing millennials. In 1960, the average annual health insurance cost per person was $146. In 2016, it hit $10,345. When adjusted for inflation, that's a 9-fold increase. Costs are expected to increase to $14,944 in 2023. Money stress. So all these millennial BWs who are chasing bottom shelf brads, maybe it's linked to money stress. Maybe it's depression. It could be something, could be linked. Bottom shelf Brad and BWs. I mean, there has to be a correlation there, right?
Right. I can't say nothing. No, that you a fool for that one. Oh boy. Oh man. Goodness gracious. Yeah, I think, but I mean, those, I was gonna say they're working too much, working too much to make anybody go out of their mind, So the one little part though, I do have to agree with. I think, in today's society, the nature of business and the nature of what most people do, especially like if you're not in a relaxed role, it's definitely a lot more aggressive in today's business climate, where we're taking more work home more often. That's something that, looking at the predecessors, in history, they worked hard, but they had a lot of they had a lot more family time, a lot more time to unwind before, they had to go back and fire it up and get in there on Monday and, put the business helmet back on. The other part of that is that, even I think with, because, I think that article tells part of the story perhaps, but not all of it, because I would beg to differ that some of the more well compensated millennials out there work just about as damn hard, and they've got stress too, and they make a lot of money, and they can afford the help. So very interesting on that aspect there.
Well, I mean, if they can, afford to give super chats to certain channels, man, they can afford to.
That's right, $100
mental
super
health treatment.
chats about
So there's a lot. Yeah, there's a lot of mental health, undiagnosed people inside Black YouTube, so Black social media for that matter, but especially YouTube. You see a lot of that.
Tell Dr. Phoenix to start offering some consultation sessions, make him some little more money over that way.
I don't think that's his field of expertise. I think you might have to write some kind of like automated program or something like that. Use some kind of AI to kind of treat some of these people. So many of them. One doctor to too many is an issue. But I think Black men have it the worst because there's so much pressure on being a Black man that can provide. And if you can't provide, you're a lame, you're corny, you ain't shit. You got to get your weight up, stay in your own lane. All these sort of labels that berate you and degrade you. But I find it interesting that Barbershop Brad doesn't have this problem though.
No, not at all. He doesn't have that pressure.
No. You want concert tickets? Get on your knees. So, Let me get to this next article from CNBC.com. U.S. consumer prices were unchanged in September, the weakest reading since January. U.S. consumer prices were unchanged in September, and underlying inflation retreated, supporting expectations the Federal Reserve will cut interest rates in October for the third time this year amid risk to the economy from trade tensions. The Labor Department said on Thursday that the flat consumer price index last month was the weakest reading since January and came as increases in the cost of food and rents were offset by decreases in the prices of energy and used cars and trucks. The CPI edged up to 0.1% in August. In the 12 months through September, the CPI index increased 1.7% after advancing by the same margin in August. Economists polled by Reuters had forecast the CPI nudging up 0.1% in September and rising 1.8% on a year-on-year basis. Underlying inflation slowed in September following solid gains over the last 3 months, excluding the volatile food and energy components. The CPI climbed 0.1% after gaining 0.3% for 3 straight months. The so-called core CPI was restrained by moderated gains in the healthcare costs, as well as declines in apparel, new motor vehicles, and communications prices. In the 12 months through September, the core CPI increased 2.4%, matching August's rise. The report came on the heels of data on Tuesday showing the biggest drop in producer prices in 8 months in September. Minutes of the Fed's September 17th to 18th policy meeting published on Wednesday showed officials viewed risk to the longest economic expansion on record had increased somewhat. The expansion, now in its 11th year, is under threat from 15-month-old U.S.-China trade war, slowing growth overseas and a likely disorderly exit from the European Union by Britain. The trade war has undermined business investments and helped to drive manufacturing into recession. So we've been talking about this for quite some time, that there's going to be compounding issues that's going to aid into the deceleration of the economy here in the United States and how it's going to play out. And where do Black people fit in a lot of this stuff? Where Black people fit, especially Black millennials, is that there won't be any more opportunities like there were back in 2008 or pre 2008. A lot of jobs that you saw back in 2008 are now being automated and even estimated to be automated by 2022. Consumer spending is going to be down because there's not enough money to go around because people aren't working as much. Unless there's some kind of UPI that comes into play in the next few years, consumer index is going to be down a lot. Retail stores are closing. Amazon is not going to ship everything for free going forward. I can almost guarantee you, once they eat up retail, they'll start charging buku bucks if you want something shipped immediately to you. That's going to give way to a lot of third-party logistics delivery companies to try to backfill what Amazon won't fill and what UPS and FedEx won't deliver from a local standpoint. So I see some opportunity, but less opportunity going forward for millennials, Black millennials. You may be eating sleep for dinner.
Absolutely. Well, think about it kind of on the heels of what you just said. Let's take a look at Amazon Prime, when its current iteration, they increased prices, from, their membership, and they've kind of been on the rise, increasing prices. So I think, definitely if we're looking at this again, with a sincere business acumen, Amazon would argue that, it's in their best interest, to have the most perfect business model, which is to try to capitalize on a situation like that. So yeah, you're damn right. If they snap up a lot of retail, well, essentially that makes that their battlefield. So yeah, they're gonna charge. They're gonna put a premium on getting you that thing that you want as fast as you want it. And I think, like you said, a lot of people, us in the community, we have to ask the valid question. The legitimate question is, what are you going to do? And right now, where do some of us stand looking down that the pipeline of that scenario?
Just going through the chat. Yeah, if anybody else wants to get on the panel, the link should be in the chat. I see there's some bit of debate in the chat, so. All right, next article is from theweek.com. Think young people are hostile to capitalism now? Just wait for the next recession. Though the panic that erupted during the summer months about a potential recession has cooled somewhat since, especially with the impeachment drama taking up most of our collective attention, signs of a looming economic downturn nevertheless remain. Job growth has slowed. Levels of corporate and consumer debt have both reached all-time highs, surpassing levels last seen before the Great Recession. And the yield curve measuring the difference between 10-year and three-month Treasury bonds yields have been inverted for months. The economist Campbell Harvey, whose research showed that the inverted yield curve accurately predicted the last 7 recessions, recently said that the indicator is flashing code red. It's not normal, it's something that foreshadows bad times, observed Campbell. A downturn is probably on the horizon then, and while maybe And while it may not be as devastating as 2008 recession, which threatened to undo the entire financial system, there's a good chance that the public will respond with even more anger and intensity than 10 years ago. The last economic crisis contributed directly to the rise of populism over the following decade, but the next crisis will come squarely within the age of populism. It will also come in an age of extreme inequality and polarization, where capitalism is being questioned and critiqued more than any other period since the end of the Cold War, especially by a generation that came of a age during the Great Recession. The rise of populism wasn't just a response to the financial crisis and its painful consequences, though. It was a response to the fact that nothing fundamentally changed in its aftermath. The big banks remained too big to fail. Executives who had overseen rampant fraud remained free with their generous bonus intact. Income and wealth inequality continued to grow out of control, and wages continued to stagnate as billionaires saw their wealth multiply. In other words, the economy recovered for those on top while the recession lingered for everyone else. In his modern classic, Capital in the 21st Century, the French economist Thomas Piketty suggested that growing inequality in America contributed directly to the country's financial instability. One consequence of increasing inequality, he wrote, was virtual stagnation of the purchasing power of the lower and middle class in the United States, which inevitably made it more likely that modest households would take on debt, especially those unscrupulous banks, since unscrupulous banks and financial institutions free from regulation and eager to earn good yields on the enormous savings injected into the system by the well-to-do offered credit on increasingly generous terms. A decade after the crisis, income inequality is the highest it's been in America since the Census Bureau began tracking it over 5 decades ago. And disparities in wealth are even more extreme. Meanwhile, household debt has exceeded levels seen in 2008, reaching $14 trillion earlier this year. The number is driven largely by student loans and credit card debt, which steadily grow as wages stagnate and jobs become more precarious. These trends disproportionately affect young people, although that hasn't stopped the financial class from blaming them for the sluggish economy. Millennials are reportedly consuming less and saving more, which is causing an economic imbalance. The higher saving rate, we believe, has had this inflationary impact, driving the relatively slow growth and low inflation in this recovery, wrote an analyst for Raymond James, observing that young people are saving instead of purchasing like last generation, limiting demand growth. The fact that millennials are consuming less than their Generation X and baby boomer elders may indicate a slight cultural shift from the consumerist mindset of previous generations. But the more likely cause is that they simply have less disposable income to throw around. A recent study that surveyed 4,000 American consumers found that since 1996, the average net worth of consumers under 35 had dropped by 35%. This, along with declining real wages, increasing cost of living, homeownership has substantially declined for millennials, and swelling levels of debt, makes the growing millennial hostility towards capitalism perfectly sensible. People behave more like their income than their age, said one of these study's authors. And just as the American working class became the middle class in the mid 20th century and thus embraced capitalism, young people in the 21st century are being proletarianized and thus embracing socialism. Interesting. Coming of age in the midst of a financial crisis and entering the workforce during the rise of a gig economy has given millennials an intuitive understanding of the deep instability and unfairness of our economic and political system. A recent survey from Quinnipiac revealed just how divided older and younger Democrats are on capitalism. 44% of those aged between 18 and 34 supported the Democratic Socialist Bernie Sanders, compared to 22% for Elizabeth Warren, who is progressive but capitalist to her bones, and 9% for Joe Biden. On the other hand, 41% of those over 65 supported Biden, compared to 26% for Warren, and incredible 2% for Sanders. The socialist platform of Sanders repels older voters who grew up in the so-called golden age of capitalism, while it naturally appeals to younger voters who grew up in the age of neoliberalism and economic crisis. Of course, it's not just about one's personal income or wealth, but the fact that capitalism is having on the future of the planet as well. The 16-year-old Greta Thunberg captured well in her UN speech last month. We are in the beginning of a mass extinction, and all you can think about is money and fairy tales of eternal economic growth. When the next recession comes, young people in the working class will no doubt be impacted the hardest. And this will only further radicalize their politics. The money they feel that the system is rigged, the more they feel that the system is rigged against them, and the more they will demand the system itself be overthrown. After the 2008 recession, President Obama and the Democrats effectively saved capitalism from itself. A more radical leadership would fight to replace it with a better system. This time around, there may be far more pressure from below to do just that, especially with a more organized left and more class conscious young people. Politics is situational, and economic and political circumstances have changed drastically over the past few decades, especially since the financial crisis. The baby boomers grew up and spent their adult lives under very different conditions than most millennials today, and their contrasting worldviews reflect this reality. Millennials are set to overtake baby boomers this year as the largest generation in America, and after 10 years of tepid recovery, they will have a real say in how to respond to the next crisis. Don't expect them to make it quietly. So millennials will be hit the hardest, and probably including zennials as well, but they'll be hit the hardest when the next recession comes. Black millennials who can't find work in predominantly Black areas will have it even harder. They will be eating sleep for dinner and breakfast and lunch, unless they are in a public school where they can go get a hot meal 2 times a day and probably go to the soup kitchen at night and be sitting in the bread basket line on the weekend. Recession is coming.
Yes, it is.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it is. I saw in the chat, I think Mega Man wants to get on, so I don't know if he's coming or not. But, it's interesting. I saw a lot of the back and forth about China here in the chat as I scrolled through. It's interesting because I think, someone had said, we got to cut China off or something like that. Spending time down in the Caribbean and viewing some of the opportunities down there. Hey, Triple X. Viewing some of the opportunities down there. It's interesting. In certain parts of the Caribbean, you had Taiwan trying to cultivate a lot of business relationship or national relationships with a lot of the different countries in that region, and China, just kind of came through and just thrust them aside and has entered into a lot of what would appear to be very lucrative opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
And I was looking at everything from cars or equipment had, it came from China. It was owned by China. The Chinese supplied it. And so I think when we contrast that, looking at our situation where, we know that the recession is coming, and seeing what I saw in the chat, I got to give China some credit, just a little bit, because they find a way to kind of spread their tentacles out across the rest of the world, and capitalize on other national opportunities to sustain growth and to sustain their economy, at the same time getting a leg up on the other economy as well. So
do you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, brother. You gotta make sure you gotta make sure you raise your hand when you want to talk. So
yeah, sorry about that. I'm trying to make sure I'm on the thing the right way. All right, keep going. I apologize for disturbing you. Give me 1 second.
No, that's fine. Ty City got his hand raised. What's going on, fam? What's going on, Triple X?
What's good, up, bro? What's good, fellas? Go ahead, Ty City. I'll jump in after you.
Yeah, I mean, what we're seeing already happening with the millennials, bro. You know what I'm saying? If you look up those they living in vans right now. Like that's like a trendy thing to do right now. Like live in vans and cars and stuff like that.
Yeah.
They already starting they already starting that, man, with the millennials.
Yeah. That chick, she like the hottest chick on YouTube right now, man, and she living in the van. That Janelle Ileana chick.
Yeah.
Yeah, she like the hottest chick on here, Mike, man. You up on her? Mike? Mike, you still there, brother?
Man, they got Mike.
Yeah. I think B1 abducted, the B1 clan abducted Mike, man.
Yeah.
Nah, but yeah, she popping on YouTube, man, and she was trending for a while.
Yeah, she got 1 million subscribers in like a month, man.
Yeah, man. But you know what? When it comes to this economy, people not paying attention.
Yeah, you're right. That's facts.
Nobody paying attention. Like all this liquidity that the Fed pumping into the markets right now, nobody paying attention.
Call Ethan. You wanted to talk to. Like a lot of what you see now is like the young lady that you guys talking about. You have to find a way to make yourself valuable and viable in this economy and the one that's coming. So I can't blame her, because everything that you see is pointing towards the United States either in decline and less and less opportunities being available to the younger people, because the older people are staying in the job that they have because they are afraid to retire, not being able to pay for food, health care, and even in some cases lodging. So
yeah, I completely concur with you. I just think that when it comes to what's going on, this is the effects of I consider them the worst generation ever, the baby boomer generation. They just, in my personal view, not anyone else, but my view, during the 80s, NAFTA, they passed that, which got rid of like all the manufacturing, which built essentially Nike, these companies people love and made. But the problem was they put no tariffs on it. So Nike can go to like, Taiwan or wherever, make a $2 shoe, but sell it in the market here with no tariffs and no tax for $200 for Jordan shoes, making them billions of dollars, right? They could have tariff or tax on it. They could have done some stuff. They didn't because it was big business back then. And everyone turned a blind eye because of Reagan, crack, all that other stuff. So my personal view of everything is.
Well, they made the too big to fail banking system too. They all the way to the moon.
Well, the thing about it, you understand, this is like, it's one of those things where I'm not the biggest economist, but I keep my ear to the economy because I work in international business, what I want to work in, because, I think, unfortunately, for me and my personal view, experience with Americans is like, I don't know, I just don't do business with Americans. There's too much crap to deal with. international people are about money. But overall, my personal view is like, I think people don't really understand what's going on in China. I remember back when I was in college, I was sitting in class, top school, all that crap. I remember our professors trying to tell us some stuff about how we should all be okay with America being like number 2, all sort of crap. And I remember everyone was like, it's kind of like shaking. I stood my hand up and I was like, yo, like China's gonna collapse in the next 25, 30 years. And people looked at me like I was crazy, like, oh my God. And I was like, listen to me. They have no religion, right? This is Mao's China we're dealing with, no religion. They're communists. They turned into a crypto communist situation where they keep a certain amount of people down and they sell the people the theory of like the top people are legit. But anyone's ever dealt with Chinese people in a range in schools or whatever, if you're not part of CCP and like higher up, you're like kind of screwed, right? So essentially, you have people basically telling that narrative, and I tell people all the time, like the last thing you want, I don't care how racist America is, I don't care all the stuff we deal with, you don't want us to be number 2 to anyone. You like your BMWs, you like your cars, you better stay number 1 and maintain it.
Yeah, in China they have I guess something similar to black people. They call them Uyghurs. No, I'm just kidding. But the main point here is that and I think you'll have some great input on this is that black millennials will be hit the hardest on this. Especially black males, because they don't have a whole lot of opportunities. A lot of my guys that I grew up with, man, who did graffiti and breakdancing, man. One of the guys right now, he travels for breakdance competition. That's how he earns his keep. Makes a lot of money off of that. Other guys that I know in the graffiti industry, man, they're top notch now. They're in the big leagues now. You know, one of them works for went to go work for Echo years ago to design Echo Red for women. He was behind that. He's like the lead designer behind that. Some of the other guys I know went to work for different clothing manufacturers and stuff like that, designing clothes. And a lot and the ones who did not get into the industry, man, they're doing pieces outside, man. They're involved in doing like big murals and stuff like that for the city and the state, and travel for that. So they make big bucks doing that. But for a lot of black men, man, they just they're not going to be able to make ends meet, especially if that's what the benchmark is. Unless you're in South Carolina and you're a flashlight DJ, man, with laser lights and stuff, man.
Well played, Mike. Well played.
To be honest.
Oh my God.
Hey, can I address Pharaoh in the chat?
Yeah, get at Pharaoh.
Okay. Hey, yeah, Pharaoh, man. Essentially, from what you asking, brother, instead of me just typing a book in the chat, I'll tell you. She's from the Bay Area, man, like San Francisco. Janelle Ileana, that van chick, and they got like the highest rent in the freaking country, man. So she decided to, per her video, she said she decided to stop paying rent as she wasn't home very often and very much, and so she just lives in her van now. That's pretty much how she broke it down.
Hey, it was a YouTube agenda behind that. If you
it was, I agree. I think so.
It's a rabbit hole you could go down with that. A few people made videos on it.
It's I seen some of those, Ty City. It just something hurt. Like if you look at it, man, it just it like, especially you put your conspiracy hat on, like we like to do. You know, it's a deep rabbit hole. It seems agenda based. I mean, nobody has ever seen a channel like that just explode that fast. It's really, really, really tough to get 100,000 subscribers in 5 or 6 months, but to get 1 million in like a month, no.
Maybe you pay for subscribers. You can pay for them. I heard you can pay for like.
But but see, the difference is though, you're right, you can, but she got actual subscribers because she has that type of engagement. Like if you go to her like chat section, it's thousands of responses. So she actually has that type of engagement from somebody that's in 1 million But I almost said
Yeah,
somebody's name on here. I'm not gonna say his name because I don't want to come on.
He's definitely right about that.
Yeah, It's another part. Go ahead, Nagon.
No, I saw some young girl. She's driving around in the car. She works as like a she does customer service or whatever. You know, like these telemarketing jobs. She's driving in the car cross country, driving all over the place. She's a millennial chick, making money, and she's got hundreds of thousands, if not millions of subscribers. And she's talking to people while she's driving cross country in her ride, and talking about how she can go to you know, one spot and wash up in the bathroom and do all. I mean, it's
a whole bath, huh?
A whole bath. It's real hot rag and all this shit. I mean, it without question is definitely some roughing it kind of roles. But
but that's cute for women.
California and all this shit is crazy.
Yeah, but that's cute for women. But a man can't do nothing like that. Can you imagine a black man living in a green dumpster?
Bro, I just want to
well, some other people, some people are imagining that for us.
Yeah, because you can take like tomato ketchup packets from like Burger King or something like that, man, and squeeze it into like a hot cup of hot water and make tomato juice, man, or tomato drink or whatever you want to call it, man.
Hey, that's right.
I see some folks doing some ill shit. So I mean, this chick's got millions of people. All kind of people.
Well, the thing about it, if she has millions of subscribers, I guarantee she's doing chat and all that. If she has donors, like I know there's a group of YouTube people that do like, you know, they go drink every night or whatever, and you know, you're not making much money, but you forget like we're not seeing all the donations they're getting. I remember this one guy tried to pretend like he's poor, wouldn't pay rent, and then someone exposed him and Streamlabs was like, "You're making about $1,200 a day," and I was like, "He's making $1,200 a day, but he fronts like he's starving." You know, and drinking and has nowhere to go. Like,
so that's the new thing to be a bottom shelf Brad. To be a bottom shelf Brad is the new thing now.
I don't know if the guy's he's kind of fat, but maybe I don't know.
Because we have a lot of bottom shelf Tyrones in the community. How come nobody ain't saying nothing about that?
Yeah, that's the big facts, Mike. Go ahead. Yeah. You got it, bro.
Nah, because I mean, if I had a 240Z Datsun and I tried to live out of it, man, people be going in on me.
Damn, Mike.
Hey.
I know you would, man. Hey. The girls would be roasting the hell out of you in the chat in the comment section. If you
you bum ass nigga, dusty ass nigga. They be all type shit.
They be going in on you, dude.
Man.
Hey, can you imagine seeing your girl crawling out my dumpster?
yo, that shit would actually like the channel. I think the channel will actually go down in flame. It would actually literally self-ignite into real flames. That's how hot that shit would get, man.
That's crazy,
man.
Airing that shit out the frame. That shit basically tearing it out the frame, bro. They really would.
Yeah,
you can be select.
You.
Yeah, you can be select from a dumpster, man. It's crazy. Crazy.
No, but it's funny. You can see the girls getting away with it. They're driving cross country in their rides, talking about it, talking about I got a hot rag. But yet, it's cool. It's cool with that they got millions of subscribers. Oh man, it's just I don't know.
Who finds this attractive from a male standpoint? Like, are dudes like really like, yo, I need to get at her, man. She ain't
dudes are up in there like flies to a freshly dropped turd, fam. They're all over that shit. They're all over her, man. They're all over her.
Yo, her feet must stink, dog. Yo, her feet must match. Yo, I gotta get at her.
Listen, I can't. I don't even want to go there. But folks, something about that shit got these boys hopping. She's got man folks up in there, man.
Hey, Mike,
you know what it is? Go ahead.
Hey, you don't think them dirty dick riders be having that van rocking?
They be rocking. And see, this is the thing. So she's mobile, right? So if she really can hook up with you, she can drive over to your crib, get tightened up, get in that shower.
That's crazy. That's crazy. Box Chevys.
She's driving across country, fam. She's driving across country.
Yeah, box Chevys and van life, man. That is crazy. Who would have thought that being a dusty nigga could get you celebrity status, man?
This chick got this shit down to science, and then she was on her job. She got these jobs where she can do telemarketing and all this shit on the phone while she's driving in the ride cross country with a hot rag. I'm just saying this shit is crazy. I've never seen anything like this before.
It's a political agenda that's pushing that, and if you do the deep dive, you'll see they pushing that lifestyle because it's beneficial for other people to have people living like that and think that it's okay.
I would have to say so. It's crazy.
Yeah, that's what I think, to convince us. Like,
I would have to say so. Yeah.
I feel you.
No, go right ahead, and I'll come right after you, brother.
I'll say. Go on. I know when I was in college, I knew people when I was in college and graduate school who literally, I knew a guy who just moved from New York to go to school out on the West Coast. We were in like law school. It was just crazy. You're at law school 16 hours a day first year. It's like anyone's been will tell you it's hell. And the whole goal is to break you. So after a while, he was just like, man, I'm just gonna like live in my car. But I was like, man, are you serious? But I helped him out with my boy, but like he come to my house, get food, but like I didn't blame him. I was like, why are you gonna pay $1,200 when you're not even there? Literally, we live in the library for the whole year, you know what I mean? So like, it happens. I think the difference is kids doing that through college, or I've heard of NFL players doing that their first year or first season, or whatever. That shouldn't be the norm. Like NFL or first year college or med school, you're 18-hour days and whatever. But if you're a normal person living like that, there's an issue, because that's your life. That's not like a short-term situation you're going through or whatever. So I think it's just one of those situations where I think they're scared. I think the people, whoever, the economists or whatever, they're freaked out because, like I said in the chat, the whole point is to maintain for the middle class white American guy to have a wife, dog, 2.5 kids. If you maintain that, all this goes to shit. 100% it goes down, right?
Yeah.
You have to maintain that. That's why when someone said in the chat, they're going to bring back manufacturing. They're going to have to. Hence them starting the tariff with China. Hence them starting the trade war, the likely trade war with China to wean us off them, because they messed up giving so much to China, thinking China wasn't thinking the way they were thinking. But I still think 100% that China is going to implode in civil war. Hence the first starts of that was the Hong Kong situation. You're going to have Taiwan get into it. And right now you see China putting out little fires, even the Uyghurs down in the southeast part of China, right?
The Uyghurs.
With camps, all these things to quell the mental, intellectual uprising of the Chinese people. They're getting tired of the CCP where only 300 million live good. Well, they have 2 billion. How are the rest living? Like shit.
Yeah. Well, I think
or whatever,
Yeah, I think what's because we covered this months ago before, but 2 out of 3 tiny house purchases are by women. So women are really attracted to this sort of empty nest or tiny nest, whatever you want to call it. And they seem to really be pushing for it big time, man. But when you get to the point where you're living out of a van and you're just like, there's no real major agenda here. You're taking baths with baby wipes. It's getting crazy because I see some of these people, man. They be talking about people. They be talking about dudes trying to get at them. I'm like, who's trying to get at you? Like,
listen, if a girl's living that way and she's living that way, I used to work in clubs. I've known strippers and all that whole world.
Yeah.
I used to run a club. Like, if they're living that way, there's gonna be some guy, usually a fat guy, 37 to like 47, who will save her. And she's literally, you may think she's nothing. I don't know how cute this girl is, but I'm telling you, every day there's guys in the DMs hitting her up. Why do you think she's driving cross country? She's meeting dudes to see who's the one to save her.
So the incels are paying for the lifestyle.
They're paying for her. They're paying for her. Probably has some there's something they do. What's it called? Like cam tube, whatever crap. And mind you, porn's gotten so like porn stars don't get no more money, right? Like they do for sale, whatever, right? So like now it's like, well, crap, these guys can get the girl in the porno now. If she's cheap now, right? You can get her, or you pay your fee. So it's like, if she's doing that, I don't know how hot this girl is, depending on how hot she is, but I've met kids that came from money in Venice Beach that lived in Venice just because they wanted to be homeless for 3 months to see how it was, to like write a book or write a story.
I mean, she's supposed to be like a black Filipino. She looks pretty good to me.
Here you go. You might go out there and try to subsidize her life too.
Wait a minute. No.
Triple X or triple van?
And everything too, I don't know how she is, bro, but she's
No,
Filipino.
I ain't putting on my cape for it though.
Listen,
I ain't
she's
do all that.
Filipino. She's
I
part of
heard, I heard something flapping in the wind.
Not a
Filipinos,
chance.
bro,
Not a
are
chance.
taught, low key. If they're in the culture, they're taught to finesse dudes for money. That's the entire industry. Like that's like 40% of the income of the Philippines is sexpats and them giving old dudes. Right? That's like 40% of the income of the Philippines. Like if she's Filipino, she came from a family like that. Like she knows what she's doing, bro. Like if worse goes to worse, she can always get her a sexpat that's 60 years old, 45 to 50 years old on YouTube. You'll see him every day. They'll take care of her.
Yeah.
Yeah, so basically her channel is what? OnlyFans.com van life?
I don't know.
Man.
You damn fool, man.
She'll be saved within a year, bro. I'm telling you, she's not going to be there forever. I feel like this is going to be a way for her to get quick money, get donations, and then when worse comes to worse, she'll find her, her prince. He just might be an older dude,
I think what the deal is with her is this. This is my opinion. And first of all, let me get this out of the way. I definitely wouldn't save her. Mike, you better take a closer look at my profile picture. That right there should let you know there ain't no saving going on, bro. Number two, first of all, with her, I would say I think it's an agenda, probably an inside job or something from YouTube with the algorithm. Likely some money was exchanged. And I think long term in the next year or two, they're going to try to put this girl up on a reality show and be like, oh, Janelle Ileana, she has 4 or 5 million subscribers on YouTube. She now has a reality show. She's very photogenic. It's a plan. It's a grand plan. That's my thoughts.
But it's that whole agenda about millennials being against capitalism. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying? That's starting the blame game. Like, we have to live like this.
Well, you think that Pookie is against the capitalism as well?
Not at all. Not at all.
No.
I've changed too much, bro. I know a lot of fools in LA. They're about them chains, like for real. I just think it was a joke. No, it is exactly like that. So I doubt that they're about money. I don't know, man. I don't think millennials are against capital. I think millennials just, I don't know. It's like you gotta look at it this way: the baby generation, in my personal view, sabotaged all the millennials like completely 100%. Like your friends you grew up with. I grew up in a suburban area, whatever. I'd say like literally like out of all the parents I knew, like 70% were pieces of crap and 30% were actually good parents. And all the coaches I had, they weren't getting players on. They were sabotaging players because they didn't make it back in 1972. You know what I mean? Like that's what I saw with the baby boomer generation. Most of my friends, I got mentors by luck because I'm very charismatic, got in my way, but most of my friends have never had a mentor in their life. The generation before us, all they had was mentors or apprenticeships. Can you name any of your friends that got that?
Nah, man. I barely got it myself, but man,
Exactly.
I'm thinking about I'm thinking about quitting my IT job, man. Kind of getting a U-Haul and just live out of that shit, man. Just
My man, that's what I'm talking about.
yeah, man.
Risk it all.
Yeah,
Don't call me.
Just hit the Cash App.
Yeah.
let me get to these next articles, man. We can open it up, man. Just go ham. China unexpectedly injects $28 billion of cash as growth slows. China caught traders off guard with a surprise injection into the financial system via loans to banks ahead of data on Friday, which is expected to show a further slowdown in the domestic economy. The People's Bank of China added 200 billion yuan, $28 billion US, of one-year cash through the medium-term lending facility on Wednesday. It kept the interest rate steady. The move took traders by surprise as the authorities usually inject liquidity when previously offered loans come due and the next batch won't mature until November 5th. So China could kind of supplement the economy a little bit, but not to the extent that they that it would be necessary to actually reduce a slowdown from a booming economy. So this is basically putting ointment on a gunshot wound. This is not sustainable.
Oh yeah, like they're trying to, like I said before, I believe the Hong Kong thing's a big deal. People forget Hong Kong is like the reason why China's like kind of like capitalist. Like people forget the history of Hong Kong, French Indochina, Britain. They made this country was an international kind of country within China. And then finally, when they got rid of it, when they lost it, there was a deal made to give Hong Kong back to China by 2043. That's what they're fighting about, is China's trying to take over that international trading port, right, before 2043, because they kind of like feel like they need to, essentially, right? And the Hong Kong people are fighting back against that. They're like, yo, we made a deal, whoop-de-whoop-de-whoop, right? Mm-hmm. So my personal view is this is just the start of a fire. Like, Hong Kong isn't just getting suppressed. They're fighting super hard, right? And then China is trying to, through the NBA and all that stuff, all the business deals, they're trying to suppress international support of it. Hence the LeBron situation or the NBA or anyone that's the Hollywood or whatever, right? And the thing about it is they're trying to just like stop something that I feel intellectually can't be stopped. Like, it happens in every society, right? You have people are living great and people that aren't living so great, and then you don't have religion to brainwash them or keep them in check, right? So what's keeping them in check? What's keeping the people in Mao's China, like, I always look at it kind of like Animal. I don't know if you guys have ever watched the cartoon, read the book Animal Farm, and look at it like Animal Farm. Like, what's keeping them from uprising, right? The only thing is they're selling this Chinese nationalistic narrative, which is great. The problem is, what's China been doing? Sending over 200,000 to America to get educated.
This guy, bro, you're not looking at what's going on in China.
Hey, it's not even that deep, bro. We looking at China acquire all these hard assets. Like, even here in Dallas, they got these Chinese developers got all these buildings and all this stuff. It don't matter when all this stuff collapses. China's gonna be left holding hard assets. they wash trading this money that they pumping in there.
They're buying up cities or towns in California. From my
they were doing it. I remember in Long Beach they bought I think they bought an airport or something. I don't know, some old thing.
But that's what I'm saying. When it all falls down, China's gonna have infrastructure and hard assets everywhere, not army bases and not you know what I'm saying, embassies and shit. That's what this is about. It ain't even that deep.
Brother, you gotta look at China is playing a long game. They're not playing the pure capitalism is make how much you can, whenever you can, however you can. China is not playing that game. China is trying to lift, instead of what you have in America is 1% of people trying to take as much from everybody else as possible. In China, they're trying to lift a majority of their people out of the poverty. They can't lift everybody. Since China came into being in the capitalist system, when they put them into the world economy, they have lifted the equivalent of almost twice the American population out of poverty. China is not playing the kind of game that you think they're playing. Yes, China has problems.
Yeah.
Yes, China has problems. They're gonna face difficulties. But China is putting themselves in a position where when the US can no longer support itself, China will have that whole economic stage to itself. And you are not looking at this. You are following the narrative that China is going to fall because of what's happening, what this trade war
no.
I don't think it has to. Hey, whoa. You're following the narrative instead of looking at China as it is. China is in the world economy, but China is looking at itself as being self-supporting down the road.
Do you think that that they would the United States would actually use eminent domain to take back a lot of those assets, hard assets?
I think that America is going to listen to me. I think in my view with America, I think what's going to happen is we're going to get a little bit more nationalistic, because China, an American, you can't own land there, right? If you're an American or a foreigner, you have to basically marry someone. Even then, you're still can't really own land. I just think America. I think I'm not an economist, but from what I've seen with economy and what I do know with deals and everything, I think China. People forget, like, China has a population that's going to literally be half in 40 years. Like, the whole you know, people forget in the 1970s and 60s and 70s and 80s, they were literally like killing all the females in China. They were killing them, the babies, right? Because they had a system where the men would prevail. And the problem is now they have a situation where they have, I think it's like 3-to-1 men to women. So they don't have enough people to replenish all the things they built or done.
That's what sex dolls are for.
What?
That's what sex dolls are for.
Well, they need people. We don't need sex dolls. They need people to actually like take over the jobs and whatever. They don't need like dolls, whatever. But they need to have that. And when that happens, it's already starting to happen now. It'll be 300,000, 350,000 a year. The next like 5-10 years, people dying off, right? And they can't replace them. And that's why China was trying to, at one point, just about 7 years ago, trying to convince people to start having 2 kids again. And the problem was they've been doing 1 kid for so long, it's been a cultural norm, and the Chinese people resistant towards it. Even now they have propaganda and they're telling them to have more than 1 child, having 2. They're trying to replenish their population. That's gonna be an issue. So I think there's a myriad of issues going on with China. Though I think, you know, their nobility of them to lift up their people, that's great. But I don't give a crap about any of that stuff. I'm not Chinese. That means nothing to me. I'm American. We have to win. I like BMWs. Pretty simple. Yeah. We have to win. I don't care about that nobility, whatever. Like, we have to look at them as like a trade enemy, and it's imperialist war. They're not playing nice with us. Why we play nice with them? Like,
yeah, but what I'm saying is we've become so accustomed to the U.S. dollar and having dollars and being a power of just in this currency, having the upper hand with our currency. But when it comes down to it, that the groundwork already been laid for the Chinese. They already laid the groundwork. They could just keep watch trading and investing in all these different countries. They're gonna win in the end.
Okay, let me ask you a question. Maybe like you guys are right. I just don't think so, because what happened with Gaddafi? We tried to make the gold dinar. What do we do? We try to unite all of Africa and Saudi Arabia and all the Middle Eastern countries. What happened with that? It was.
You're looking at this as being a short game. You're not seeing the long game. China is going into Africa not only to get its commodities that it needs.
They're taking the resources of the land, obviously.
No, you're not. China is not going into Africa only to get the commodities that it needs. They could see down the road that their population is getting older. They're bringing nations from across the world to create a market for China, and not only a market for China, but 20 years from now, like the U.S. corporations will go into different parts of the world. You got, say for instance, Apple. They build Apple in throughout Asia. Then they export it into America, pull all the money out. China is playing a game that says, tomorrow we're gonna have friends throughout the world, not people who we control by the dollar. If you don't do what we say, we're gonna punish you. We're gonna take away the dollar from you, destroy your economy. China is involved in building that economy so that they have a place to sell their products and they have a place to sit. China's, when it sends people to Africa, some of those people stay in Africa. They get married to Africans, create African families.
Yep. Yep.
And that generation is, they're not saying the 1.4 billion people in China. If you got 300 million of those people moving out across the world, they're still Chinese. And wherever they go, they're going to build businesses. Whatever country there is going to be connected to China. That's what China is doing. They're not forcing you to come. They're not like the World Bank who's coming in to take over all your industries and pull all the money out of it and keep you in poverty.
Well,
What's happening in Africa is being built up.
Well, see, that's the thing.
Might be taking resources out, but Africa is still being built.
Well, yeah, but that's the thing with the U.S. dollar. You can't wash the U.S. dollar into another U.S. dollar. They can print tons of Chinese money and then wash it into American dollars. Trade it into American dollars and take full advantage of that. This is where they just winning, because all of these assets and things that they're acquiring, it's really not costing them nothing.
Right. Let me go to so Royalty has his hand up.
Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
All right.
Yeah, brother.
Hey, what's going on? What's going on?
What's up, Zo?
Hey, what's going on, DE? So, with this issue with China, I mean, Nikki Taylor makes some very good points, but the thing is, China's playing this long-term game, and the long-term game that they're playing is that a post-US dollar world, simply being they see the trends that are coming down. I mean, when you look at the United States, US debt to GDP is 100%. In a couple of years, US the interest in the debt is going to be about the same size as the U.S. defense budget. So they see down the pike, they see the United States as a declining power, and they're making the moves now. And they're making moves now in order to survive a post-U.S. dollar world. That's why you see China buying gold, buying silver. That's why China has a monopoly on raw earth materials. And with that, when they have that monopoly, that's the reason why I said in the chat that those manufacturing jobs are not coming back. That's one reason. Another reason why those manufacturing jobs are not coming back to the United States is these corporations are unwilling to pay the cost it is to open a factory here in the United States, because the reason why corporations like doing business overseas and not in America is that it's cheaper to open a factory in Vietnam. Those people are not going to need any pensions, no healthcare, and none of that stuff. So it's better to keep those factory jobs overseas. And no matter what Trump does, he gives them tax breaks or whatever, but those jobs are not coming back. The U.S. industrial base is basically a shell of its former self. It's not going to be the way it was in the 1950s and 60s. And another thing too is, Nikki Taylor makes some very good points that China has some issues coming down the pike. But when you look at the Hong Kong issue, the reason why the Chinese have not swarmed in, sending the PLA, is they're playing the long game. A lot of businesses that were in Hong Kong were bought out by state-owned corporations, and a lot of those state-owned corporations that were in Hong Kong went to Shanghai. D.E. Raptor mentioned this a couple of weeks ago.
They building up Shenzhen.
Yeah,
Exactly.
But the thing is, China is going to run into a slowdown in 2022.
Yes.
They have a bubble coming.
Yep.
Where they made they produced a lot of housing, but nobody's able to purchase it because of the stupid laws that they have that forbid that overtax married couples when buying condos and houses. And so
those ghost cities.
Right, it creates ghost towns, which means that the money that was pumped into it is not being returned back, and then you take in the manufacturing aspect where goods are being manufactured, but they're not having the same return on investment because they deflated the currency artificially, and those goods are not being sold at the same rate. So they're going to run into a major slowdown in the next couple of years, maybe even sooner, because if what happens in the United States will determine everything else around the world. If the United States comes down, then everybody else will come crashing too.
Exactly.
Well, I completely agree with you. Yeah, you're right. I just think the one thing people don't look at with China, I think a lot of people don't really look at like history and sociology and all that stuff. I think people look at it from a strictly capitalistic standpoint, which is great. But the problem is, like, capitalism swings, and people listen to me. You have an economy. America is right now. We create a capitalistic economy, right? And now what are they crapping about? Millennials won't buy anything. That's why we're in the crapper. No, you're in the crapper because you outsource all the jobs, so there's no strong dollar for us here, and we need to buy stuff to keep it going. Now, China's in the same kind of boat. Though they create the stuff and they sell it out there, they're only strong because of our dollar, because the American dollar is what keeps our debt with them and their dollar, and us using their stuff, making everybody else use their stuff. People forget that, there's no religion there. There's nothing there keeping these people. Besides, people talk about Taiwan is old China, right? Taiwan didn't get taken over by Mao and all that. So Taiwan and them have culture or whatever. Hong Kong had different culture because of French, Indochina, and all that stuff. But mainland China and all who you're dealing with, there is no culture. Like there's
no, everybody has a culture. They have a culture.
There's no culture.
You're wrong about that, bro.
There's no culture. I mean, there's nothing. The elite there, the CCP, who pretend to be communists, but it's really just elite communism where there's a higher class and there's a lower class, right? There's nothing there from what I've seen that keeps societies together for hundreds and hundreds of years. China's very young. People always look at it like it's been around for 40. No, Mao's China is very young. That's the China we're talking. We're not talking about China from the back in the day of the clans. We're talking about China after Mao took over in the communist China, right? It's very young. It's younger than America. They're going to go through the same social upheavals and issues we have with liberty, with taxation, all these things that we went through for 300 years that every new country goes through. How many times America tried to put democracy in a new country and it fails miserably? Like when we took over Libya and we tried to give them democracy, people, then like Egypt with the Muslim Brotherhood, took it all. If they found to be democracy, what happened? Muslims took over, went through a whole bunch of crap. They're still going through crap. That's China.
Wait. That didn't have nothing to do with democracy, fam.
What?
Let me get to this next article because we're running way behind. We got 3 articles left. This one is from yahoonews.com. Bank rate. Nearly half of U.S. isn't prepared for recession as economic clouds gather. Whether the U.S. economy is headed for a recession is anyone's guess. But a new survey by Bankrate suggests many consumers won't be ready if it happens. In a new study, the organization found that 4 in 10 of 2,000 people surveyed would be underprepared if growth turns negative in the next 6 to 12 months. The data included 16% who say they are not ready at all. The survey comes amid uncertainty as U.S. and China square off in a trade war that's entering its second year. Meanwhile, the 2008 financial crisis is still fresh in the minds of many Americans who lost jobs and burned through savings. Although the unemployment rate is now at a record 50-year low of 3.5%, economists are warning of slowing growth into 2020. The news isn't all bleak, as some are taking modest steps to shore up their finances in case of a downturn. Bankrate found that nearly half, 44% of U.S. consumers are choosing to spend less money, while 33% are saving more for emergencies, and 31% are paying down credit card debt. Meanwhile, a slim 15% are saving for retirement, and 10% are looking for a better or more stable job, the firm found. The steps that most people are taking are prudent steps in any environment. They are saving more and they are paying down credit card debt. If your household budget is tight or your income is stagnant, the only way to increase savings and pay down more credit card debt is spend less money, said Bankrate's chief financial analyst, Greg McBride. Some of the data's findings reveal a generational split. Many millennials graduated college in the last recession to slim employment opportunities, according to Bankrate. That cohort is more likely than any other age group to be taking steps to secure their finances at 74%, compared to 70% of Generation X and 67% of baby boomers. Still, nearly a third of Americans, 31%, aren't doing anything at all to prepare themselves for a recession, Bankrate found. I can almost guarantee you that 31% is coming from the Black community. Almost guaranteed. I see it on YouTube. I see it in the streets. New True Religion's on. No income. New pairs of Jordans, new pairs of Timbs. Guys wearing ankle cut socks with Timbs on, and they call that, cooling. It's crazy out here. It's really crazy. I think that 31% is the Black community.
Well, we are never prepared for anything. We are reactionaries instead of people who look into the future and prepare for it. That's the way Black people normally, well, in America at least, that's the way Black people normally live life.
I think something happened to D.
Me?
Oh, okay. You're back.
Yeah, I was saying that what you said is true, because while other people, like we had a conversation the other day where people were saying that the people from the I think it's the Goldman was saying people from that went through the depression, 1930s. These people had, you go into them and they have 2 refrigerators with food in both refrigerators.
Mm-hmm.
And they millionaires.
Yeah.
Millionaires.
And today's generation, Black people, we don't prepare for anything. We very few of us look down the road and say, okay, you know what? This is what I want to do tomorrow, and I'm gonna prepare myself for it.
Mm-hmm.
No, we're gonna live for today. And when tomorrow shows up, we expect somebody else to take care of the government that's gonna take care of us. I heard people say that in front of my face. I mean, these are educated people said the United States, I'm a slave. I'm a result of slavery, and the U.S. government owed me.
What, you don't think that?
For this stuff.
Hey, let's go to Todd City, because Todd City was talking before we cut him off, and then we'll go to Cyberdyne.
Nah, it's just one of them things where you just sit back and you just, when something happens, you be like, dang, man, you just think about all the shit you done messed up, and you're like, damn, I should have never did that. I should never did that. But
Mm-hmm.
I mean, savings accounts and things of that nature, you got to put something up, because you don't want to be, you don't want to be the person without a chair when the music
Mm-hmm.
stops.
Cyberdyne.
Yeah, you didn't have another article, because I actually I wanted to make sure I don't want to digress or sidetrack from the progress, because I wanted to actually excuse me, comment back where we were talking about China.
Yeah, let me finish this last article, and then
Okay.
we'll jump into it. This one is from CNBC.com. U.S. retail sales unexpectedly declined, and a sign that consumer economy could be cracking. This is a graph of retail sales over the last 5 years, and we see that there's been spikes between 2015 and 2016, up to 1.5%, and then between 2017 and 2018, up to 2.5%, or greater than 2%, and then 2019 we see a sharp dip to less than negative 2%. So this is where we are. U.S. retail sales fell off for the first time in 7 months in September, raising fears that a slowdown in the American manufacturing sector could be starting to bleed into consumer side of the economy. The Commerce Department said Wednesday that retail sales dropped 0.3% last month as households slashed spending on building materials, online purchases, and especially automobiles. We talked about this before. 1 million cars sitting on lots or dealerships not unsold. The decline was the first since February. Data for August was revised up to show retail sales gaining 0.6% instead of 0.4% as previously reported. Economists polled by Reuters had forecast retail sales would climb 0.3% in September. Compared with September of last year, retail sales increased 4.1%. While this is by no means conclusive evidence that the consumer is wavering, after all, the upward revisions reduce the impact of September's declines. It nonetheless reinforces our ongoing concern that a spending retrenchment will ultimately trigger a more durable slowdown, wrote Ian Lingen, head of rates research at BMO Capital Markets. Auto sales fell 0.9% in September, the most in 8 months, while receipts at service stations fell 0.7% in what likely reflects cheaper gasoline. Withholding automobiles, gasoline, building materials, and food services, retail sales were little changed in September after climbing 0.3% in August. The so-called core figure corresponds more closely to the consumer spending component of U.S. economic activity. Last month's drop in August unedited gain in core sales hint at a marked slowdown in consumer spending in the third quarter that economists had been anticipating after a surge in the prior quarter. Consumption, in which comprises about 66% of the US GDP activity, increased at a 4.6 annualized rate in the second quarter, the most in 1.5 years. The strength of are you kidding me? All right, you guys got to mute yourself if you're not talking. The strength of the US consumer also served as leverage for President Donald Trump, who's touted the health of the American economy in the White House protracted trade war with China. Though Trump announced a temporary truce in the fight last Friday, economists say the longest economic expansion on record remained in danger without all import duties being rolled back. The drop back in retail sales in September was partly driven by price-related fallback in gasoline prices, but the fact that underlying control group retail sales were unchanged provides another clear sign that consumption growth is slowing, wrote Michael Pierce, senior U.S. economist at Capital Economics. We think real consumption rose by 2.5% annualized in the third quarter, down from 4.2% rise in the second. With overall GDP growth slowing to just 1.5 annualized from 2%. Receipts at clothing stores rose by 1.3% according to the government's report, while furniture sales climbed 0.6%. Sales at restaurants and bars gained 0.2%. So people are pulling back because they have to. No real reason to go out and buy a new car. If you bought one 10 years ago, it's probably still good, regardless if the warranty is already expired on it. And these, these flat screen TVs, if you bought a 50-inch a couple years ago, you may not be looking to get that 65, that 70-inch. Might want to hold off on that. Same thing with the iPhone. I know a lot of people still using iPhone 8s, iPhone 7, won't upgrade. Cracked screens and all. Go ahead, Ty City.
I'll just tell you, relax, fam.
Who? Me?
You start going in, fam.
Why you got a problem with that?
Man, I just got a new phone, dog.
Oh, yeah?
I just left from a Galaxy S7, dog.
To what?
I ain't even gonna tell you.
Oh, man.
No.
You got a B1 wireless cool.
Nah, man. Let me go ahead and tell you, man. Nah, man. Nah. I got a Pixel 3 now, man. I should have waited for the 4.
You should have waited for the 4. You should have got on Google Fi and got it for cheaper, $100 cheaper. But you didn't consult with the brain trust.
I jumped the gun, man. I pulled the trigger too early, man. I should have did my research and looked up some release dates, but yeah.
Yeah, man.
I'll wait another 3 years.
Did you need that phone, or did you just get it out of impulse?
No, you know what? My other phone, like I said, like I'm not the person that just go buy a new phone all the time. Like the battery wouldn't hold the charge. It was a good phone, it was charged, but it started, the battery life was just kind of iffy. That's the only reason why.
It's probably cheaper to spend $30 on a new battery than a couple $100 on a new phone, right?
Nah, I don't know. The battery was sealed on it. I just ain't feel like dealing with all that. I just got a new phone.
Wait a second. You're a diesel mechanic, right? You're a diesel technician. You take apart trucks and engines and shit like that, but you wouldn't take apart a phone to get to a battery?
Oh, the shame.
No.
Oh, the shame.
Hey, I really just get a new phone, man. I like it because you know what? I couldn't get no more updates on it too. That was another thing too, man.
Well, that's so funny. We just had a car talk last night about getting new parts and new features on cars, and you was against that. Now all of a sudden it's about new phone features. You all about that life now, right?
But look, Mike, I'm gonna tell you something about being like the Joneses. I didn't even know I needed all this new stuff, man. now I feel like I was missing out. I never was missing out until I got a new phone.
Wow. or your picture's gonna come in clear now. You were shooting potato before.
Oh man, man, come on, man.
Yeah, I can't believe Thai City sold out, man. He done jump started the economy again, buying out new phones and stuff like that.
I know, man. I know.
Got a fat lace case out there or something like that. Let me go to Cyber9, man. He had his hand up first.
Yeah, that's funny. Now I was gonna say, I wonder how much of that data that you had in that graph was interlaced with people rather not wanting to buy certain stuff as opposed to just the graph makers charting, sales being down, or people kind of holding their wallets or products that they want not being for the price that they want them for, and just deciding, you know what, I ain't gonna buy it. But anyway, so you hit that nail on the head. But anyway, what I wanted to say about China, I think Mega Man was talking on that point, so I want to kind of go retro on that, is that, I think some of the struggles that China has, remember, because I think you said China, relatively young, or the new point anyway, with China, a lot of what goes on over there is you've got traditionalists that are, they got a problem with some of the youngsters not following a lot of those traditional ways. And so they're kind of arguing from that standpoint. On the other hand, I wanted to talk about China's, human capital, and the value that they place on education in terms of their human capital. I think, we were talking about, Black folks not really wanting to take opportunities, or, being lazy in the community, when compared with the Chinese. Is one thing that I'll tell you, is that from a very young age, it is ingrained in them, the discipline to drill themselves with education. And so, they may come over here to some of our universities and schools or whatnot, but let's not underlook the fact, when they do come over here, they perform. And, if we look at it across the board, especially in the medical or the engineering fields, the Asians, particularly the Chinese, are among some of the highest achieving individuals in some of the prestigious, houses of education here. So I wanted to kind of interject that point, that, from that angle.
Let's go to DE Raptor. Here's hand up.
Okay, we were talking about the economy just now, and people not buying house. Remember, you were talking about earlier, you had an article about they were trying to give away cars. People were getting car loans that you paying $60 a month, $70.
Oh, yeah. My coworker got so people understand what you're talking about. My coworker got a brand new Toyota Camry for $1,000 down and $49 a month.
Yeah. And not only that particular article, but last week we were talking about how millennials they were saying the millennials weren't spending enough to keep the economy going. And I can't understand why they were this guy read article saying unexpectedly the economy just dropped unexpectedly. This is not unexpected. They were seeing this all along. Just that somehow they wanted to make it appear like, things were rosy, and we had just, start seeing the bad news. Nope, we've been seeing the bad news for a long time.
Let's go to Nick.
Hey, well, yeah, like I just want to retro on the Chinese thing, but I'll clarify something. I went to Cal Berkeley, so I was with the super smart Chinese kids, I guess. I don't know what you're hearing or whatever. That's completely, unequivocally not true at all. Like, the thing about you understand is that, okay, like, I'll just give it to you really quickly. So, like, when they got rid of affirmative action in California, people thought it was about to be about merit-based entrance, but that's not what happened. They basically just took away spots for tax-paying American citizens, aka Black Americans and Hispanic Americans, other lower groups that pay tax in California, and they sold those spots to Chinese nationals. So right now at Cal, there's 17,000 kids, or 15 to 16,000 that are Chinese nationals. and the other 12,000 are Asian American students, which are totally separate from Chinese national students, right? Now, kids you hear about being smart, as you say, most of them aren't, like 95% of them are not from Chinese. They're Asian American students raised in America that range from a myriad of different cultures, from Japanese to Vietnamese to whatever. The whole things they're American, or else you can even say ABC, Chinese American students, right? Those are the ones you hear about going to med school, right? Or going to whatever. Now, the Chinese nationals, most of them, they're given degrees because they pay for them. Like there's articles right now, you live right now with Chinese students cheating across the board and getting expelled every single semester, like bad, very badly, to the point where a lot of professors are pressured to not even say anything. You can read articles about that as recent as today or yesterday or whatever that state these things. So like, yes, there's a culture of, education, all that stuff. But my point is the Chinese students we're not getting the top Chinese students. The top ones go to the university in China because they have like one test for like 400,000 people for each province. If you pass that test, whatever it is, you go into the CCP universities there. Now the ones we're getting are the kids of the CCP who are doing the briberies, and then they pay U.S. schools to get their kids in. Hence them, they have literally entire companies for this where they get kids into American schools. And because people are foolish and they get rid of affirmative action, they're able to do that in states like California and Washington State, right? And other places that got rid of affirmative action. Now, because it's gotten so bad, other states like Washington State and like Harvard have said, no, we're bringing back affirmative action. We're not going to sell off our universities to Chinese nationals and students that we think are disservice to American students because there's no merit base. Like the real question I ask people all the time is, I have to take the SATs, PSATs, all that stuff to get into Cal, right? What do the Chinese students take? What's the equivalent of that? There is no.
I have to disagree. I have to slightly disagree with you, Mega Man. And the reason because, excuse me, you're only citing one point of reference. That's University of Cal.
No, I'm not. There's no article you can leave right now. You go look up right now. You can bring it up on the screen.
You have to let him respond, Nick.
Go on. I apologize. Go on.
So like I said, I have to respectfully disagree, because you only cite one body of one point of reference in your initial offering there. It's very hard to do that, to kind of speak across the board from one initial point of reference and to make a generality. What that does, and this is just my opinion, but I think I'm correct on this, that deprives all of the other Chinese students out there who go to prestigious and probably not so prestigious universities that have legitimately earned their way. So, without having substantial data here, where we could examine that or we can look at it, it's quick to go Google something, but it's a totally entirely different thing to make sure that we have credible and authoritative sources right here. That's how we work. That's how we roll here, to be able to make that type of assertion. That's just.
I can see that point. I apologize. I'll just say this. It was such a big business. They have articles you can look right now that say that the 50 most Chinese national schools in America, and they have a list. Like I think University of Illinois has 40% of their student body is Chinese nationals, literally, because in Chicago, the black kids don't want to go to school, right? What do they need to go for, right? So they sell those spots to international students. They don't give it to more white kids or more other kids. They have a cap, and then the ones that are open, they sell the spots internationally. That's how schools make money. For what?
Okay. So look, check this out. The Chinese, they actually have to change the grading scales for the Chinese. It's not because they paying their way into these schools. They actually trying to make it harder for these Chinese kids.
I'm sorry, I don't believe that at all. I don't believe that at all. They're 100% paying.
Nick, you have to let Ty City respond.
Go on.
No, I'm saying that why would they have to make it harder for them? And they claiming discrimination, like these kids want to be tested.
What kids are you referring to? Chinese Americans or are you talking about? I think here's the thing I think people conflate. Now, okay, this is something that I think people really conflate. The Harvard lawsuit that just happened, right? It was between Asian American students suing Harvard for them being, they felt discriminated against. But when the numbers came out and they lost the Supreme Court, you look at it, they lost because, number one, it was backed by someone who wanted to get affirmative action. But then the real issue was they're overrepresented in Harvard for their percentage in society. So there's a thing that people don't understand. And this is something I think, I'm glad your show can say this because I want people to understand this. The reason why people get into school is pretty simple. We take the census, right? You get the census every single year, right? You get the census to know how many people or race you are because of taxes. When you pay taxes into a system, we had a system way back that says, hey, if 12% of people pay taxes into this situation, 12% of their kids, these taxes go into schools, universities, other public universities. That means 12% of your people should have a chance in this school. That's what affirmative action literally does. Now, when states think they're clever and they go against affirmative action, what happens? You give people the free reign to go anywhere they want. All affirmative action does is make sure that tax-paying Americans get a certain number of spots, like 90% of the people, into the school. Now, here's a question I tell people all the time when they give me your argument is this, so California's so liberal, supposedly, Washington State's so liberal, supposedly. Why hasn't Alabama or Mississippi or any of these states that people feel are very racist and all these things, why haven't they abolished affirmative action? Why haven't they just, what?
Okay, look, listen, these white people are not, they don't like these Chinese kids taking up these spaces.
I'm not debating that. That's what I'm trying to tell you. That's what I'm trying
to listen, and your argument, it doesn't make any sense for them to be paying to be there.
Okay. Number one, I think you're I'm sorry to tell you, you're unequivocally wrong. Yes, it does make 100% sense. Because if you go to University of Alabama, or these schools in the South, or these schools in the Midwest that have affirmative action, the cap of foreign students is down to I think 8%. Now, without affirmative action and with merit-based admittance, it goes up to 35% or 40%. Like at the UCs, not just Cal, go to every UC that's top, it happens there, right? Why do you think they tried to sue Harvard? Harvard has Asian American students that sued them, but they always have a high rate of Chinese nationals in their school. Same as USC, same as any school.
They're testing higher. That's what I'm saying. They're testing higher.
I'll tell you right now, they're not. I'm telling you, 100%, they're not. They're not testing anything.
I need to go to Zoe Royalty. He has his hand up.
Go ahead.
Yeah. What Nikki said about the Chinese students cheating, he is right on that. He's right on that part because I think it was like a UCLA. There was an article that said there was a cheating ring with Chinese students in UCLA, and they do cheat. But for the most part, if we look at Chinese culture, they value education very well, and even the ones that do come over here and they probably come subpar in Chinese standards, they still do well. They excel. They become doctors. They become engineers and that sort of thing. But I want to circle back on when Nikki says that China is like a ticking time bomb. I think the CCP is a fairly young party, and they took over in the 1940s and 50s. However, when he says that there's no religion in China, there is some form of religion in China. I mean, you have Taoism, Confucianism is not really a religion, and then you have this rise of Christianity in China. So there is some form of religion there. And secondly,
it's less of a religion, more of a way of life for them. It's kind of like Hinduism in India.
Yeah, exactly. And the issues that China is facing, I'm not downplaying them. They're going to face major issues. However, all the moves that China is making in regards to supplanting the U.S. as the number one power, they're thinking the long term. They're thinking they're buying up assets. I mean, come on, they control at least 80% plus of the rare earths market. So that means U.S. defense contractors, if they want to get, chips for, the F-35, they have to buy those rare earths from China. So, I mean, that's a major checkmate. And so that's a major checkmate. And another thing too is the Chinese people. The question is, will they ever rise up over the CCP? I don't see that happening. The Chinese have been drilled into believing in law and order. Yes, the Tiananmen Square uprising occurred, but if you look through history, the only way a people's revolt ever succeeds is if the army allows the people to overtake the government. That's how it is. And the PLA, this is the reason why the Chinese government has basically put a lot of funding into the PLA, not only to counter the United States, but also to, check on their own people, and also their law enforcement agent, like their state police also. There's also the reason why China has these, Mike, you talk about it all the time, those cameras where, they could take a picture of your face and see like, oh, is this guy likely to be a thief or whatever? So they have a massive surveillance state. It's kind of hard for people to rise up over that. One, two, you have to understand that the majority of the Chinese are Han Chinese. I don't see China collapsing like the Soviet Union because it's two totally different entities. China is overwhelmingly Han Chinese, and they value law and order. They don't want to go back to the Maoist days where China's, 1,000 clans, going to war with each other. They value order.
Yeah, let me interject on that because the problem that China's going to run into isn't so much as money, but the ability to feed 1 billion people. That becomes a problem. So
Yep.
they're running into that problem right now where there's not enough. What do you call it?
Pork, Mike.
Pork. Yeah, the pork. They love their pork fried rice, so they're not able to supply enough of it. So because they have this African swine flu that's killing their livestock, and we know that the Chinese government of agriculture and the Russian government of agriculture have come out and with separate reports on separate times and have both said that this is not a genuine African swine flu. This is artificially developed. So they're finding that there's biological warfare against their livestock in order to starve them and crash their economy. So to your point, Zoroyalty, there is some legitimacy in a sudden collapse of not being able to feed your people, but not so much from the currency itself or economic slowdown, but just the ability to feed people becomes a problem.
So do you think China? Well, here's the thing that leaders always love to do in times of crisis. Do you think China will start a war to distract the people from their internal issues? I mean, I think that'll be the only game that's the only card they would have left to just like gin up some nationalism. So I don't know.
Well, they're already pretty locked in step. They kind of goose step to their to the government's.
Who are they gonna steal on?
Yeah, they kind of
Taiwan or Hong Kong. Take it over for good. Maybe, most likely.
Well, they can't take Taiwan. I mean, every war game scenario shows that it could be a bloodbath for China.
It won't be worth it. It won't be worth it for them to take Taiwan at this point. They'll just close off the straits and kind of starve them out. But they would have to worry about their shipping lanes being interfered with by piracy from the United States and NATO. That's something that they would be really concerned about, because once their shipping lanes from a merchant standpoint become interfered with, then they can't ship goods, and then their economy goes bust. They would have no choice other than to come out and fight. I don't know if who would win on that side, because as it stands right now, we've covered dozens of articles of Chinese PLA Navy popping up in the middle of battleship rings for the United States. I mean, how many times has this happened that we've covered this, where the Chinese are following closely behind the United States Navy, and the PLA Air Force has brought down a Poseidon spy plane, and so on and so forth. They've done what they could do from a pre-war game standpoint. So I don't know if anybody wants to really get into a fight at this point. It'd be pretty bloody. It'd probably bring the economy down to its knees.
Yeah, I concur with you. I think to retroactively go back to the one guy was telling me about the students and the smarts. Like, listen, like you understand something.
His name's Zoe.
Sorry, Zoe. Yeah, Zoe. You understand something. Like, it's one thing to believe the propaganda, but it's all propaganda. Like everything you hear is propaganda. Like prior to like you understand the way America's always done propaganda. So I'll give you a prime example. Prior to the housing market, right? What were they saying about Mexicans? They're saying they're the hardest working people. They work twice as hard as whatever. It's all great. And the housing market crashed. Then what do we hear? They're criminals. Get them out of the country. What are they doing here? Da, da, da. It switched like that on the top of the dime, right? So initial point is prior to the mass let-in of Chinese nationals in right when we did the NAFTA trade and opened up with the business because we have debt to them. That's why they get the most visas. It's pretty simple. Then they start drumming up they're so smart. They're these great people, but people always forget. You had the Chinese Exclusion Act in 1921 that kicked them all out of the country.
I thought that was 1880.
It was 1880, happened 1921 in Seattle, in Washington State. It happened again. They had another one. It's happened before. Like it's all propaganda. Like, I'll be honest with you. I've known a lot of smart people. Race has nothing to do with it. All right, it's nothing to do with it. A smart person's a smart person, individualistic. Like,
well, we know that coming out of slavery, that most of your modern inventions came from the ex-slaves or the
exactly
Africans.
Like, right, but educate people. Not even that. Like people. It's all propaganda. Like, what I'm trying to say is, well, here's this. All of a sudden they're this, then all of a sudden they're so smart people, right? And then they trick you and say, oh my God, Californians, let's get rid of affirmative action. Don't need it no more, right? So prior to 1982, you had it. Things were going great. All of a sudden, they get rid of it. What happened to Black people and Hispanic people in California? What are they living like now? Like, they basically took all their spots and sold them to Chinese nationals for money for pensions. That's nothing to do with. Another thing too that I think is kind of hilarious is people hear about the scandal with the celebrity people and they paid their way into college. You don't think the Chinese CCP people are paying people to get into those schools? Are you kidding me? When it's the government subsidization, all they have to do is get a letter signed by the government there and they get into our schools. Like, obviously they're paying. That's how it's always worked. There are people there that can't speak a lick of English at schools that have their own private tutors that will give them a degree because a degree from these schools means something over there. Another thing too, if they're as smart as everyone says, which people are bought into this narrative, why are they coming here for education? Why do they need to come to our universities to learn our way of thinking and our education level for medicine, for chemistry, for all these things they go back over there to use?
Well, because it's easier to develop your society off of things that have already been produced somewhere else. I mean, the Americans did the same exact thing to the British and the rest of the world.
I'm not debating that, but like I said before, if they were as smart as the guy's saying, they'd be innovators. They wouldn't be.
You don't think that they're innovating right now based on?
A little bit. I think but I think the innovation comes from those educated in the West, 100%, because they go back, like a 90% go back. Like that's what it is. It's fine. It's a system, but my thing I'm trying to say is what I've seen and what I know, I don't see like people that are in those type of schools that are at Harvard or Yale, whatever, they're smart people across the board. Now, there may be a lot more of the Chinese because of the fact that they apply more, there's more people, they have more money coming from foreign lands to come to American school. Like, we're in debt to go to school. They get subsidized by the government. You get my point? So
yeah.
It's a different situation. If you go take a Chinese person, you get paid up front, $250K paid up front. For us, American, we're in debt when we go in. So it's a different situation. So of course the school might want more.
So they students who come over here and cheat become the innovators over there. The people who have to cheat over here become the innovators.
I don't know how many cheat, but I know enough cheat that's
Come on, man.
Well, I mean, there was a time when white Americans had, but there was a time when the white Americans had an advantage over black Americans as well.
No, I understand. I understand that.
No, I'm not saying it to you. I'm just throwing it out there so that people understand. People who listen to this understand that when we blame China for cheating, we have to also take a step back and look at American history and saw that there was a lot of white Americans who cheated black Americans too.
Oh no, I don't knock the Chinese for cheating, bro. Don't trust me, bro. And what I see going on now is the Chinese outdoing America at their own game, bro. Whether it be currency manipulation, geopolitics, like trust me, I don't knock them for cheating. They playing the game.
Yeah, well, it sounds to me that Nick is a little bit saucy. If I would so put it, little duck saucy, if I say so.
Listen,
I won't be sending you any chopsticks descriptions.
Okay, you know what? I'll say this. The only thing I'm saucy about is that people are so uneducated and naive to think that getting rid of affirmative action, like it's like this on both sides. You have white American mutts that want to get rid of affirmative action, think it helps black people. You have other races that want to get rid of it, think whatever. You have Asian Americans that get rid of affirmative action, think it helps them. It doesn't help them at all. All they do is the spots they get when they get rid of the black kids or the Hispanic kids, whatever, they sell it to Chinese nationals. Look at any school. That's literally a liberal school or whatever. They do it for their pensions. That's what they do. They sell the spots, they get this money, and they have these evaluation of their costs and their tenure, and they do it for their pensions, of the cost of us young, millennial students. So yeah, it annoys me. It's not the Chinese fault at all. I think like that other guy, like Zoe said, they're playing the game. But I'm not going to pretend that someone is as smart as someone that I see, because I don't see that. Mind you, not just the Chinese. There's a lot of Saudis that come over and other countries where they just fail out. They can't even pass the grades because they don't know what they're doing.
Can I make an interjection?
Let me go to DE Raptor, and then we'll go to Cyberdyne because they've been waiting. They have their hand raised.
Look, this argument is taking us off the course of the direction we're supposed to be going. You talk about economics, and he's talking about Chinese cheating. This thing is always going on in America, and the propaganda, you will see it. 1 minute the Chinese, he said it himself. 1 minute the Chinese say the Chinese are the best, and then the next minute they come up with an article that says the Chinese are cheating. So he's going off on an argument that takes us nowhere. I mean, please. And his argument about how China don't have a religion, China does have a religion. They have more than one. And one of them, the most important that he's not paying attention to, is the one that says the leader knows best for all of us. And the Han Dynasty, this is the direction that the Han Dynasty took China over. What? How many thousands of years ago? This has become a religion. First is the children, then it is the family, then it is the leader, the ultimate leader. Everything the leader does, unless he's crazy, no Chinese leader has ever been taken out unless he went crazy. And in order for him to be taken out, he has to do something absolutely unimaginable. If you go back to Chinese history, you will see this written down. It's written.
Well, Black Shingo in the chat says that China has no swag in terms of culture. So
you gotta send some more ADOS over there to China.
I don't tell you. I don't know. China, Mao did take down all of them, and Mao was from the elite class, and he took down all his rivals, and he wasn't the king. You
gotta understand where China was. You forgetting that all Chinese people were on the drugs from the West. The British had flooded the British, American,
opium wars.
China with opium. Every Chinese, except for the elite. I mean, the elite can do anything because they had guns pointed at them from the British. Mm-hmm. If Mao Zedong didn't come along, China would never have come out of that. Yeah. You are forgetting these things. You convenient.
I'm not forgetting it at all. I totally see it.
Let me go to Cyberdyne because he's been waiting. He has his hand raised.
Thank you. So, I want to ask you all a question, and I want you all to internalize this. And also, I want to keep it, economically based, like Dee said, but kind of stay where we are. So, let's put aside let's take into account what Megan says about affirmative action and what we're saying about cheating. And so let's apply this to actually what's going on now. When you go to the hospital, right, you see the nurse and the nurse practitioner, they send you into the room and the doctor comes in, it's a Chinese doctor, Asian doctor. You trust them. We trust them. When we see a lot of the steel structures that are used to build a lot of the buildings, a lot of the infrastructure, especially, China still, right? We trust the integrity of those buildings, of those structures, the architects that build those things. They trust the integrity of those products. When we look at things like the Honda car or the electric engines, that, some of that stuff's Chinese or Japanese made or Asian made. We trust the integrity of those vehicles. There's a lot of people driving around in Uber. There's a lot of rich executives driving around in some of those Hondas or those Odysseys. So how does all this fit together? I'm going to tie a loop here and bring it back to the schooling, right? And this is kind of, again, where I say I respectfully disagree. Affirmative action and all that stuff sounds good, but I think what I think Ty City, I'm going to kind of piggyback on his wagon a little. That doesn't have anything to do when you compare it against performance head to head. See, the doctors who are Chinese that make it, that earn that doctor's designation, they're not in the hospitals malpracticing. We don't have people dying because some Chinese person made it through, or well, hold on, brother, hold on. We don't have any malpractice because somebody slipped through the. Hold on, hear me out. We don't have malpractice going on because somebody slipped through the cracks. Now we can sit here and say that, well, yeah, they're buying up spots. I'm gonna keep it all the way real, and this is something that we always talk about here in the Black Brain Trust. Someone had just earlier said, I think it was DE, that mentioned, hey, we haven't really taken a strong ingrained approach in drilling the discipline of valuing education in our communities. If I had to go another step back that the Black Brain Trust has covered, we've covered, or the gentlemen have covered, the fact that, we had drug dealers in the community. They made a ton of money. One could argue the fact that today's drug dealers, let's say if they're not buying real estate and buildings, but they're foolishly squandering their money, they could be putting some of these Black kids in some of these schools. So I can't really, when I compare that at par value, and I look at all this in totality, again, I have to compare performance. Are those people and those opportunities, are they dropping the ball when the ball's being handed to them? No, they're not. Otherwise, we wouldn't see them in productive and effective roles in society that has, an impact economically. You know what I'm saying? Like, do you understand where I'm coming from on that point? I want to make sure I'm not crossing wires and that I'm really threading this thoroughly.
Yeah, I understand where you're coming from. I don't disagree with a lot of what you said. I just disagree with some of the things you said. Like, for me, because I was pre-med before I went to law school. So I had a background, I worked in the hospital. And I'll say this to you. There is plenty of malpractice for a plethora of doctors, regardless of race. And I will tell you, and the main thing I'll tell you is this. There's a joke we say in medicine that if you want to go to a doctor, the first one you go to is a Black doctor. Black first, Armenian, then Hindu second. After that, you go white, or white, European white, then white. And the last you go is Asian Chinese. And the reason because of that, not because of racial issues, because of the fact that, like I said before, like, the cheating is rampant. The cheating was rampant during undergrad. And a lot of people do pay. You can look it up and you can see issues of it happening. They do pay people to take their MCAT for them. It's so common, right, that they had to make new precautions for it. On top of that, when it comes to a Black doctor, the reason why you have Ben Carson's and the Black doctors are the best, because no one helps them when they're in medical school. They don't have a group of people giving them notes or answers. So if a Black doctor goes through the education schooling to get through to med school, they're usually the best because they actually know what they're doing, 100%. That's why you see them as heads of research, heads of hospitals, heads of whatever, regardless of the racism that happens within society in the medical field. If you can do surgery, you can do surgery. It doesn't matter what race color you are. You get paid the amount of money. Hence why Ben Carson is the most foremost whatever, and there's plenty of other African-American to Black doctors there. Another thing too I'll state to you is this. Yes, I think the Chinese are very smart. They value education. But
Mhm.
I've seen in my own life, the smartest people I've seen and the smartest people with the most degrees I've seen in the US are Nigerians. Nigerians are foremost doctors. They're the highest scoring on the MCAT.
I think that's subjective.
That's what
I
I've
think
seen.
No, he has a point that
Yeah,
Nigerian,
he's telling the truth about the Nigerians. And
yeah,
the
Nigerians have the highest.
Yeah, they outpace the Chinese and Asians consistently. He's right about that. Well, when it
And
comes to the MCATs, yep.
yeah.
So they're the best doctors, or they have the highest scores on MCATs.
They're
Both.
the best
Both.
doctors. They are.
They're the best doctors, and
So
yeah.
what I'm trying to say to you is this: is that it's very easy to look at it like it's very easy to you basically have a bottleneck is what I'm trying to tell you. You have a situation where there's 2 billion people in a country, right? And we're getting the bottleneck of the richest people in that country to come to our country and go to school here. So you have a bottleneck of them compared to us. So you're going through, out of 2 billion people, we're getting the top 300,000 every year that come here. So yes, they're going to be smart. Yes, they're going to be smarter than the most, but they're not smarter than the top American or at Nigerian or whatever students. So I will let you know their education system isn't as great as ours or not better than ours to this official. The only difference is they tie culture and they tie education to their being, right? So if I'm Chinese kid and I'm young, right, and I'm going through everything they go through, like put them in like, violin. Our friends are Chinese American and they go through all the things they go through. Yeah, of course the parents are going to want that because you forget something. A lot of people were getting in here that were Chinese 20 years ago. They were the poor Asians. We were getting the poor Asians in the early 70s, late 80s. We didn't start getting the rich Han Chinese until about like 1990 recently. That's why you see that the visas changed dramatically. Now, the Asian Americans people deal with, most of them aren't ABC. They're like Vietnamese or Japanese or Cambodian or those variations of Asian. Those are the ones you see that are Americanized are the ones like Asian American kids going to school. They don't come from wealth. They're usually the poor people of their society, came to America, and now they're going to school. That's why they work so insanely hard about it. Now, the new ones we're getting, the Chinese we're getting, most of them aren't being doctors. Most of them are going into chemistry. That's what I saw. Chemistry, engineering, computer science. That's what I saw. Yes, a few went to medical school. Yes, very few went to law school. But most weren't becoming doctors. The ones you're seeing becoming doctors that you're claiming are usually Asian-born Chinese that have been here for 2 generations. Their parents own their laundromat, or their parents work in they own like a store in Chinatown, every local area. Those are the ones you're seeing. Those are 2nd-generation Chinese. The ones they're coming over now, the Han, new rich Chinese, those are ones people are complaining about that are cheating and all these other things. It's a new recent immigrants. Immigration changed.
Oh, you mean like crazy rich Asians?
Yeah, like that. Those types. Yes, that's what you're dealing with. Those ones that you without. That's what you're dealing with. That's why that movie hits so well.
Okay.
That's what you're dealing with.
Okay, we got Super Triz on the panel now. What's going on, bro? I think he might be away right now.
What's going on, everybody? Respect.
I'm chilling, bro.
Peace, Super Triz, peace.
Yeah. I'm in agreement that from what I see, I've been in healthcare since 2001, and if I personally have a doctor that if I need to see a physician, I'd rather my physician be black.
100%. They know what they're doing.
Number one, they know what they're doing. Absolutely, that's the top of the list. Because the doctors that actually that are black, they didn't get any handouts. They had to work.
They didn't know it all. 100%.
And secondly, I personally I've seen how some physicians, just not even just physicians, just anybody in healthcare, like what their disposition is towards blacks. And here's the problem. A lot of times, blacks bring it on themselves, and I'm gonna tell you why. First of all, there's problems with every demographic when you're talking about patients. You always got somebody who's overbearing, demanding, and nasty attitude as far as patients are concerned. Disrespectful, entitled. But the problem is that there's already a stigma associated with being black. So when you're black and you come in with that negative disposition, it's amplified. And so then, people, the people that are actually taking care of you, they're kind of standoffish anyway. And so I think that's the reason why you see some of the disparities with the with the different types of ethnic groups that are taking care of you. But as Blacks, we kind of understand, and most time, like if I go in, like it'll be like a patient, everybody was saying like, oh, he's an asshole, blah blah blah, he's acting this, that, and third. But when I come in and they see me, that I'm Black, then their whole demeanor changes, because they know that, or they just assume that that I'm gonna relate to them, and then it's not like a negative thing. Like I've had patients that think everybody is racist. Black patients think everybody is racist, but when I come in, they see that I'm Black and they automatically assume that I have their best interest in heart. So I think that's part of it too.
Mm-hmm.
Little do they know.
No, I mean, the head of Mass General here in Boston was selected. He's a Jamaican doctor who's the head of Mass General, the CEO of the organization now, and they recruit him for that very reason that you were talking about, Nick, and some of the rest of the guys on here.
Another thing too, what I'm trying to say,
go ahead.
They're smart. The culture is smart. What I'm trying to say is, like, but think about it this way. You look at it from a perspective. All right, this is why I never forget. I had a girl back when I was in Cal. I had one day, we were talking to her, and she was telling me she worked harder than me. I never forget this. We're in class. She's like, I worked harder than you. I had a 4.12. And I looked at her and I said, let me get this straight. You took an honors class all the year to basically prepare you for the SATs. And I had to play football, do track and field, do wrestling all year round, like 2 months of study. And you got 200 more points than me, but you worked harder than me. And she broke out crying because of her delusion as a white American girl. But my point is that you gotta look at it relative, like the Chinese kids that come here or whatever, some of them are very, very bright. Their parents are very, very strict, but they're not doing the stuff we're doing. If I sit in all year to study for, one test, of course I'm gonna do well. But the American culture isn't like that. In America, we gotta do a lot of other stuff. We want people well-rounded. So of course it's gonna be a different situation. That's why Harvard doesn't like to take them. There's a reason for it. Harvard spoke, you can read the affidavit of what the reasons they gave, and just say it was racist, and they said they didn't have the virtues of innovation, all this stuff. This is with American-born Chinese and all that stuff. There's a reason for that. Like, doing that type of rigid stuff loses a lot of stuff, that intangibles that we want for people to have as Americans. And on top of that, how smart are you? If you spent 4 years studying for one test, you get 200 points more than me. How smart are you really? I only had 3 months. You know what I mean? Like, you gotta look at it relative. You can't look at it from the perspective of like, well, he did well on that test. Yeah, okay. And two people don't talk about too is all that grades crap means nothing. Like, what matters is, can you do the MCAT or the LSAT? And I've seen many people with 4.2 GPAs, they can't get higher than a 141 on the LSAT. Law school, done. I've seen people that are, super smart, they got the biochem degree, they can't get higher than a 21 on the MCAT. They can't get into med school. And this is a lot of Asian kids I knew. And another thing too, we put out like how much, I don't know, like 10,000 a year, biochem grads. How many get into med school from that bunch of, but predominantly Asians, right? I think less than 8% pass the MCAT. So what does that tell you?
I think to Super Triz's point, what I wanted to say, I think he mentioned the kind nature of the Black guy. Like you said, he comes in there, and generally when people see him, they see the brother with the melanin, they automatically feel at ease. And something that reminded me of, in different sectors in business and so forth. Generally, I noticed that a lot of other people, other cultures, take our kindness for weakness, because Black men, we are inherently strong and exuding strength, power, but grace. But a lot of times, in the various sectors out there in the world, in the business world, the medical field, a lot of other people will use that and take advantage of that to kind of put us in a bad position, because they know the African American person, the Black person cares too much, or they care, so we can use that as a weapon against them to kind of bring them down. So,
anyone else want to jump in?
Yeah, I want to say something real quick. Sorry about this noise. It's raining like Jesus Christ. Let me hold on for a second.
You must have got your sunroof open, man.
I'm in October.
Yeah, man.
I don't think I want to clarify. I'm not hostile or anything. I just think my issue is more people don't realize the hustle with them getting rid of affirmative action at places. Because I got into Cal with no affirmative action. I got in after 92, right? When I was there, we had 80 Black students, athletes included. I was one of them, and I got in academically. So to think that, and the issue is not the students that got in. The issue is if you're paying taxes, you should be there. Like, that's how it works. Like, getting rid of that and allowing them to take your tax dollars to pay for other people that aren't from your group is asinine. It makes no sense at all, because would you pay for your neighbor's kid to go to school and your kid not to? No. So why are people okay with it when it comes to selling spots to foreign nationals? Like, it makes no sense to me. Like, should be.
So Mega, let me ask you a question. So to that point, I think a good point here that, maybe would help people being the Black Brain Trust is that, because I think you're in Cal, right? Or Washington? Okay. Is there any pushback? Because you sound extremely knowledgeable in that area in terms of what's going on. So I know there may be others, but has there been any efforts of local pushback, or has there been any?
I'll say this. Remember a couple years ago, there was a big video that came out from UCLA that was like Asians in the library and all that stuff. And it was a big, huge backlash. The girl got all this hate and she got out of school or whatever. I had friends at UCLA at the time, I knew some people. And from what I heard, and mind you, this is a myriad of different people, they all agreed with her. And this is a myriad of races, from Mexican to Black to white people. They all agreed with her because she was speaking about not Asian Americans, but Asian, foreign Asian nationals that whatever, right? And what I'm trying to say is people don't realize at these schools, right, there isn't some coalition between Asian Americans and foreign Asians. They literally hate each other. It's like oil and water, you know what I mean? They don't mess with each other. But it's kind of like one of those things where it's the schools are clever and they kind of just most Americans, most Americans aren't that deep when looking at people. So they go Asian, they throw it all in one loop. Well, there's a myriad of different Asians, from Japanese to Chinese to Han to, Hmong, and people don't really realize that. People don't look that deep. So they're clever in that way. And I think there has been pushback, because I'll give you a prime example. The state of Washington, they got rid of affirmative action right after California did. And what happened was they realized that University of Washington and Washington State, their school went from being mind you, Washington State's predominantly white, right? So they got rid of affirmative action because obviously they're racist. They want to get rid of all the Black and Hispanic kids. But the percentage is only 4%. 3% of minority kids even live in the state. But, and they all come from the bases, the military bases, but they're racist, whatever. And they got rid of it. And then what happened was essentially their school became almost fully Asian. And what they do is 30% they take are Asian Americans, and then they have a foreign group where they tell you it's foreign, but it's really Chinese nationals. So when you go to UW, you walk around, you're like, this isn't 30%, this is 65, 70%. And what happened is the state of Washington this last year repealed it. They brought back affirmative action, not for Black kids, because Black kids are only at 2.3% of the population. And plus of all, most of the Black kids don't even go to school in Washington State. They go out of state because a lot of these kids from the military families, to get the white kids back into University of Washington, the main schools, because affirmative action keeps the numbers by your population size. So because they're predominantly white, they realize, oh my God, what we do when you get these dumb white kids back into UW, and they brought back affirmative action. And they're going to sell it as Black kids or whatever, but it's not. Only 3% of Black kids live in the state. It's not going to do anything for them anyway, right? But it keeps it where 75% or 80% of the population has to be white again. Now they're going to reclaim UW. It's happened right now. It happened last year. Asian Americans are fighting against it, and it just happened, right? Because they realized that the people in the nation or the community are like, no, we pay taxes. this is for our students to go to this school. And then what it does, it puts a cap size on the foreign national students.
Nagone 11, you've been quiet the last hour. You have anything you want to add? I think Nagone might be working out. Let me give some.
Hey, Mike, can I jump in real quick?
Hey, go right ahead, brother.
Sorry about that. I mean, it was like a torrential downpour for like a couple minutes. But one thing that I want to mention is that I concur with the gentleman previously. I'm in Washington State. I'm in Seattle right now, and I work in the medical center area of Seattle on Broadway. But at any rate, one of the things that I noticed, just basically all through my life growing up, I've always been in proximity to like Nigerians in California, and then of course again in Houston. But one thing I noticed is that from a cultural standpoint, they just have a higher standard for their children. And so like for instance, like a black family, like I remember being in a barber shop and people talking about their kids and like, yeah, my kids get all A's and B's, but in an African family, Nigerian family, you can't say I get A's and B's. You can't even just say you get A's. Like I remember it was kids that I went to school with where not only did they want to see the grade, they wanted to see the percentage. The parents want to see the percentage. So if they got like a 95%, the parents are going to ask, well, why didn't you get a 98%? Why didn't you get a 99%? Like those are the questions that the parents are asking. Like it's just not enough to get, an A, and let alone a B. God forbid you get a B, you're going to get beat. And so, yeah. And so it's like, and then it's like, African American families like, oh, like if you're passing, that's a good thing. Like, yeah, well, you're passing. They're happy that you're just passing, right? But if you get like a B, you may get some money for a B. If you get an A, you're gonna get some money for an A. You see what I'm saying? But African families, like A is the expectation. You're not gonna get any money for getting an A. You're saying like A is the standard. Anything less than an A is unacceptable. And that's the reason why you see the success rates that you see is because of culture.
Did anybody grow up with a best friend that that you competed against? To Super Tria's point, and I'll drop off. My number one homie. We grew up, and his mom. We was one of the few people in the hood like that. But his mom, this dude stayed on honor roll, and we always competed. We competed on racing, throwing the football, who did the best on the science test. Did anybody grow up with or make friends with a guy that was real competitive in school? I guess in your generation, your era.
Yeah. Like I didn't really see that with Nigerians as far as competing with each other. It was more or less because their parents were enforcing it. But Asians, like I lived across the street from some Chinese. Matter of fact, that was like my high school girlfriend, the Chinese girl across the street from me, but I knew like her family and her cousins and stuff like that. And like when they would be in school, like after a test, that was the first thing that they were doing was comparing the grades and try to see who had the higher grade. Like that was the thing. Like, and if you got the lowest grade, that was like they would make fun of you. Whereas like black people, like if you came to school with your shoes, you got new shoes, right? And so in black culture, Jordans was the standard. Like either you had Jordans or you had like maybe some air up tempos or something like that, right? So you come to school with your Jordans on, right? And the first thing they looking at is, okay, do you got Jordans or are they Jumpmans? Because if you don't got actual Jordans and you just got Jumpmans, they was laughing at you.
That's true.
Like,
and they do that to this day too, bro. They still do that to this day.
They be going in on Zoroastrian in class.
Yeah,
because I'm Haitian, bro, especially in Brooklyn.
Get Shaq shoes get clowned. I remember that.
Yeah. They'll clown you. They'll clown you because you don't got the mainline Jordan. You don't got the number Jordan. So you got to have the Jordans that got the number to it, like the 17s, the 18s. Like if you got a Jordan that's a Jumpman or whatever, a Jordan Strong or one of the Trunners, like the track shoe Jordans, like they was gonna make fun of you. And that's the problem with the culture, is like we concerned with the wrong thing.
Materialism.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
The guy with the XJ900, the black guy with the XJ900, who stayed valedictorian in our school, never got any respect. To this day, he's a multi-millionaire businessman. XJ900.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's crazy. I can't believe that. Well, I'll say this to concur what the other guy said. I knew a kid who, like, you know, when you're in high school and like I rolled with a wild bunch of kids. So like I was one of those, like, I think you all seem like this. We had like one of those like secret smart kids, in the sense of like you didn't do homework, but the test came, you get an A and it just pissed the teacher off. You didn't like them. I was one of those type of kids, right? I had a friend of mine who I met who was like Nigerian. He was half or whatever, and I remember if anyone met this kid, they'd think he was just a girl getter. Like he's always about girls and running around drinking. I never forget, like I knew him through a friend of mine. He went to another school of mine. I never forget, one day I was like, yo, what's the deal with so-and-so? They're like, oh, he went to, he ended up going to University of Arizona. And they were all like, all his friends were mad because this kid never talked about it, never whatever, but he's Nigerian. He just did it. Never talked about whatever, just did his classes, did whatever. And then one day he's told his friends, oh yeah, man, like, I'm out of here. He's like, they're like, what do you mean? He's like, oh, I'm going to University of Arizona. They didn't even apply to school. He did, and he went. Computer science guy. You know what I mean? Did his thing. Was a cool dude. Like, got girls, doing some nerdy whatever thing. And that's the one thing I think I took from him after I saw that and I took it in my life, was like, yo, dude, you don't gotta run around. Like, I think a lot of people sometimes, they want the prize of being like the guy. You know, I used to call it like, everybody wants to be Michael Jordan in their own life, you know, because they weren't Michael Jordan in like high school, right? They gotta be Michael Jordan in the office, or be Michael Jordan in their friends. I'm the best, like, and mind you, when I saw him, it was just like, yo, dude, you do what you do. You're not telling the whole world. You know, as long as you know, why's anyone else gonna know? Do your thing, bide your time, and then leave. That's it. You know, that's how, I think if a lot of more Black American kids did that, they'd do 10 times better, because people didn't know I was super smart. I just kicked it. I got girls. I went out and drank. Then when they found out I was getting into Cal, they were all like, you? I was like, yeah, man. Honors and everything, too. Only like my friends really knew. That was it. And they weren't even the friends I hung out with and drank with. They were like my nerdy friends I had. And one guy on my team I had, they're just like, you know, nice guys or whatever. But they didn't tell anyone. I was just like, whatever. And I think a lot of people should do that. But I think in America, just the way we are, we have so much bravado, it's like hard to do that. You gotta let everyone know you got the brand new Jordan. You gotta let everyone know you're stunned. You gotta know everyone know this. And unfortunately, if you're the smart guy in Black American society, it's not really seen as like you're the man. I honestly think two shows killed it for that guy, that character. It was Urkel in the 90s, killed being smart for Black kids because he's so nerdy. And then it was Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, because like it's kind of a hustle. Like they're teaching you that Will's the guy. But we all should have wanted to be Carlton, right? But we thought Carlton was lame, and he was a geek, and he's a sellout, right? And Will was the guy we wanted to be. And at the end of the show, Will didn't go nowhere. People forget at the end of the episode, Will messed up his like career or whatever. He had no place to live. And Carlton finally got into Princeton. But the way the show was done, we all wanted to be Will. We didn't want to be Carlton. We wanted to get the girl. And I think that's what kind of brainwashed our generation, not the one prior to us, but our generation. Those two shows went with it.
Yeah, Jaleel White came out, and I think you might be able to find it on YouTube. He came out a couple of years ago and talked about that Urkel character actually having such a ripple effect and damaging the culture.
Oh yeah, 100%.
And I know that not Carlton Banks, Alfonso Riviere talked about that similar as well. That playing that role actually did more damage than good. Joseph C. Phillips wrote a book called He Talks Like a White Boy, which is an excellent book in my opinion. Talks about that in the first couple of chapters about the cool factor of being a Black male, and how important that is for a lot of people to interact with you. So there's a lot of, we're going to go over this tomorrow night, man. We're going to talk about the two Black Americas and kind of dissect that a little bit from a high level. Zoroti has his hand up, so let's go to Zoroti.
Yeah, and also in the Caribbean side of it, like I'm speaking as someone who comes from a Haitian family, is that, you know, they push excellence, they push education, you know, and they don't want you to, like, you know, be in the streets too much. But there's also another side to this all, that that you see, you know, I want to say African American, but Black American culture is kind of being, it becomes pervasive even to the Caribbean community and some African communities. I can see from here in New York, where you have these Caribbean kids that go to school with this, you know, with the African American kids, you know, their parents at home and telling them one thing, and then when they go to school is another thing. So they get pressured into, you know, falling for African American culture. And that's why you see a lot of them, you know, get into gang, get into drug dealing, like their parents. Like I see this all the time over here, but you have these kids in Long Island, you know, the mom's a nurse, you know, from Haiti, the dad's like, you know, he's a taxi driver from Haiti. You know, they work really hard. They try and push the kids to school. They're in Long Island or whatever. And then the culture, you know, the African American culture influences them, and then they do the wrong thing. And I think this goes back to the fact that, you know, Black American culture is, it spreads to even to the upper middle class. You see it all across America, you know, places where, you know, the Black upper class live, you know, mom, dad are doctors and lawyers, and then the kids are gang banging in the streets, you know, get arrested, get killed out here, and then, you know, they're trying to imitate the dregs of African American, of Black American culture. So you have this, you have this.
But you know why that is? See,
Mhm. Go
I
ahead,
was going to say the problem is that there's always an element, it's either somebody that's related to them, like say for instance you have a family of affluence. It's either like a cousin, some type of extended relative, or it's like a family friend that has a parent that is the problem. See, you really can't blame the children. You got to look at the parents and see you got a lot of parents that co-sign this errant behavior. Like you got a lot of parents that think it's cool that their kid is you know he's 3 years old and he's doing some type of erotic dance, or she's doing some type of, she's twerking at 3 years old. You got the parents, you know, cackling and giggling in the background, you know, or you got some kid, you know, cussing on camera, acting like he a thug, and you got the, you know, got the dad like, my boy, he ain't no punk, like, and they're co-signing this type of behavior. And so you got parents that's really that's really at the crux of the problem, because the parents have children that are immune to scrutiny. See, like if you have like a group of kids, right, and you got one kid like kind of like the screw up, right, but he's getting reinforcement at home, and so it kind of keeps him in check, right? Even if you got a kid that's kind of devious, but if you got a kid that's devious, you can even have a kid that's good, but you got a parent at home, right, that's encouraging that errant behavior, even when he gets around kids that's trying to kind of discourage him, like, oh no, I don't think we should do that because we're gonna get in trouble. But that kid doesn't care because he knows he doesn't face consequences when he gets home. So now it's like that burden of performance, you know, for that pseudo masculinity is sky high. So now everybody else has to acclimate themselves to that dysfunctional child. Everybody in that circle, you know, and then they get around them, like even if they're not his friends, just being in this proximity, right? That element of pseudo masculinity is strong. Like I even experienced that being in California. Like I felt like I had to exude some sort of bravado. Like I had to, you know, any type of somebody bump into me, like I felt like I had to fight, you know, even if it wasn't necessarily, like a lot of stuff you could walk away from, but because I was in that environment, I felt like I had to fight, even though my parents was, you know, working class, and they definitely discouraged any type of gangish or thuggish type behavior. But because I was around that environment, I felt like, okay, in order to resonate with people in this environment, I got to be like them. And I think that's the problem.
Where do you think that seed was planted, Triz? My bad.
We're actually going to go over that tomorrow with over the two Black Americas, man. We're going to.
Bro, okay. I got tons of stories about trying to fit in and shit, bro.
Yeah, bro. I mean, in high school, man, like I'm not gonna front. Like in high school, I was doing the wrong thing, getting into fights, trying to act like a real nigga, and just.
Middle school for me. middle school. That's when I was being a knucklehead, and I got out of it by 9th grade. What saved me actually was football. Coach forced me to play football, and then that like changed me entirely. But yeah, after 3 years of that.
Yeah, let me end the show now because I have to do some house cleaning on the next live stream. This should not take long, but thank you all for joining us. Please hit the like button if you have not already done so. Share the video if possible, and hit that notification bell so you get all the updates from the Black Brain Trust, including those posted on the community tab. And just as an FYI, we are not certified financial planners. If you want a certified financial planner, go to cfp.net and look up one in your area. We do not give out financial advice on this channel. And the views expressed by members of the panel are of their own and not representative of the Black Brain Trust. So.
Thanks.
Well said. Come see us.